some indication that we may not be accessible?
We are not. We've not generally live streamed when we are in person.
Oscar, can you advance it?
But we're in executive session open.
But historically, we've not live streamed executive session open.
But people can have,
So just this one. Yeah, I got it.
okay, I'm not, thank you very much. I'm sorry, go ahead, please, I apologize.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just a little bit about our company. We've been around since 2012. Oscar started the business after years of being a professional photojournalist in the Dallas market with Univision, Telemundo, Fox, many stations. When we moved here to Kansas City, he continued his career with Channel 9, KMBZ, so we've got some great experience and background in the photojournalism. And we are based here in Kansas City, Missouri, obviously, and we're very proudly minority owned. We do have our 8.8 certification federally, and of course our Kansas City, Missouri, and State of Missouri certifications as well. This is our team. We have a diverse team, and literally it's comprised of not just nationalities and ethnicities, but literally other language competencies, socioeconomics, and of course generations. It's a little bit about our experience. We do some really good work here with quasi-government partners. So we do have deep experience. One of our large partners is the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority. We have worked with the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department, in addition to many commercial clients. And typically we've worked in the general market space, but more and more now we're working in the multicultural space, and that's been our competency that we have absolutely grown and excelled in over the last few years. And for many of you, or some of you that may know us or may not know us very well, but we really deepen that experience. In 2016, we developed a sports Spanish language platform, and we are the professional broadcast Spanish language partners for several NFL teams and collegiate sports teams. So really helped us fine-tune what we do, and including the Chiefs. So we work really closely with them on their Spanish language broadcasting, all their Latino fan engagement content. This is a little bit about our recruitment experience. So we have had very intense experience in the recruitment and the recruitment spectrum, and from everything from skilled KC. Obviously, we have worked with the Kansas City, Kansas School District in the past. We do work with we've worked with community colleges, and it ranges in what we do from a recruitment spectrum, from just general awareness about the entity that we're working with to some deeper work. We also have great experience on the recruiting side, additionally for job recruitment. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim Verhoeven, who's going to talk a little bit more about our market experience.
So thank you so much for having us here tonight. We couldn't be happier. And I think as you get to know TICO, the great thing about us is we've worked with so many different entities and have done so many different things. So we've done everything from video production to translation to virtual events to a full-blown omni-channel advertising. So these are just some of the examples of different projects we've engaged with many different partners that I'm sure you've heard, seen, and viewed over the years. So working with our team, we're kind of a lean, mean fighting machine. So we're a smaller shop, and I think family is a really big thing for us. And so when you're working with TICO, you're working with the TICO family. And we really believe in just communication is absolutely essential to us. That's how we're going to win together. Your goals become our goals. And so working with TICO, you'll have a single point of contact, but like I said, we're a family, so we all know what's going on, so anyone can step in at any given time. So that's something we're really proud of. We've proposed a lot of different things to help KCPS win in the space. And the first thing we want to do is, assimilate all the research that you've already done, and we want to conduct an audit of all the current marketing and PR that you're doing as well as your competition. And I think once we understand where those gaps are and where your strengths are, we can really build a solid marketing communications plan that's going to help achieve those goals for the long term. So once we understand what we're dealing with, our audience, where those key opportunities are, we're going to develop a comprehensive marketing and communication plan that'll go across all the different channels, especially with a focus on digital and reaching the segments that we're missing on, and really develop a thoughtful, strategic plan that'll help us achieve those goals in a very cost-effective way. We think that's really important. And the other thing that you'll see when working with us is we really have an ability to present results. So we can tell you where we spent the dollars and what those results are, and we'll work very closely with Kelly and her team to make sure that we're adjusting the plan as needed. Once we see what's working, what's not working, we will adjust. And it's not a marketing plan and we call it a day and we'll see you next year. I think it's just important to continuously adjust from those learnings so we can continue to win. So, and of course, recruiting is a key part of this. And so it sounds like it's not just teachers, it's parents, it's kids, it's getting everyone familiar with the story, and everyone helps recruiting. So we think that's a really big part of this project. Next, we talked about doing the SWOT analysis and identifying those key areas, and we're able to, through digital marketing, you're really able to hone in on specific zip codes. You don't have to waste money hitting your whole market that's not relevant to you. So we're able to really use our expertise and get that message to those zip codes that are relevant to the growth here. So we're excited about that. And then how we're thinking about the marketing plan is twofold, really kind of a retention marketing strategy, keeping the people that are already bought in, keeping the families here, keeping the kids engaged, keeping the teachers here that are already succeeding, telling those stories to attract new families, new teachers, new kids. So retention marketing tends to be your most cost-effective marketing. It's just reminding people why they're here and telling those stories. I think that's another benefit of TICO is we're really good storytellers, and that's kind of the key to winning in marketing is content. And so we want to learn what those stories are, tell them to our own people, so they'll start telling their friends and families. And your own people tend to be your best advocates and your best marketing tools. So we want to make sure we take advantage of that while developing the acquisition marketing strategy. People that may have never heard of us or know our story. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Oscar to bring us home.
Okay, so we have worked with several organizations, as Cece mentioned as well, and we're really happy to be here. We're extremely honored that we're going to be able to be working with you and with your marketing team. So I guess they cover everything else. So, but we are able to provide the services because from video production, audio production, graphic design, everything we do all in-house. And we have the minds, we have the creativity, and we have the experience to deliver what you guys going to be asking from us. And there's more logos of other clients that we have worked with. And mil gracias for your attention. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
So it was a very brief overview from their perspective, but wanted to make sure we had a chance for you all to ask questions, for us to have a conversation about this. I also wanted to introduce, I have Lynn Gehring here, Ariel Andrew back here, and Tanoa Foster back here. Lynn is our marketing manager, of course, and then Ariel and Tanoa as our recruiters. I want to make sure they were present for the conversation as well. So this is a chance to ask questions, have a conversation, and the floor is obviously yours.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I know some of my colleagues will have questions. I do have one question to kind of kick things off. Is on your current client roster, is Show Me KC Schools on your current client roster at this time?
Which schools? Yes, so we did a virtual event for them. And it was a very limited engagement. It was a project.
So the engagement would not be related to the launch or execution of their enrollment system? which is-
Not at all. No, I know. It was a one-time event that we produced for them.
And are you currently engaged in it with any other public schools within the Kansas City public schools boundaries?
We do. Not in a retainer relationship, not from a recruiting perspective, but we do work with others on maybe small virtual events. We do work with the Guadalupe Center, but we do not work with the school district, for example. We work on the agency side. So I don't believe we have any conflicts as it relates to the recruiting.
I'm going to open it for some other questions. Dr. Jones?
Thank you all for your presentation. When I think about some of the concerns that myself and the colleagues have brought just about marketing in general with KCPS, I think a lot of it could be boiled down to what extent do we kind of understand the norms and values of the families and the students that we're trying to recruit and retain. And so when we think about our district, it is diverse. You know, we talk about the growing trend towards Latino students, and we also have still preponderance of African American students. And so I'm curious as to what is your process for really doing the work of identifying what those norms and values are, and then honing your message to meet a diverse set of things that people need to hear in order to feel, appropriately marketed to.
Well, excellent. So, obviously in the Latino market, we do have a major competency there. We've been doing that work for many years. It's not just about being in language, it's about also being culturally relevant. You can't just take a message and translate it. It's not going to resonate with our community. I think, too, and as it relates to the African American community, there are some social norms that we are very familiar with, the multi-generation households. There's many things that they have in common, and not just with the African American community and the Latino community, but you also have other populations that are quickly growing in the school district. You have a Hmong population. I don't have to tell you, you all know what your makeup is, but there are some things that they all have in common. Once again, the multi-generational component, how they learn, how the kids might be bilingual, but the parents are not. So you also have to be able to market. The message needs to resonate. There's several different ways to get at how you message directly to them, because it might be through a grandparent and how they're listening, or to obviously a parent of another kind of family member. What we've seen now as a result of the pandemic, or those cultural norms are becoming more pronounced because of the bubbles. So we're in bubbles. So now these extended family units are a little bit more pronounced. And we also know that these communities are heavy digital users. They're traditional media and the traditional ways of reaching and recruiting, not just for students, but in general, does not apply anymore. Especially with the multicultural market. They're getting their messages in a completely different way. And we're very good at that, the digital marketing, and especially in the multicultural spaces. We have several clients that we've toyed around, and not just toyed around, we've actually done a great job in using TikTok and other kinds of streaming services that are getting far better results than any other kind of traditional media. So we definitely we know the market. We've been doing it successfully, especially with clients like KCATA. We know that there are many other drivers that lead to decisions for families, especially multicultural families. And we try to approach it from a multi-pronged way to make sure that that they'll resonate with the message that we're trying to put forward to them.
Questions? Ms. Wilson?
First, I want to say, aren't you guys the ones that did our wonderful graduation video?
We did.
Okay, I want to make sure everybody here and online understands that the wonderful work that you guys did, it was a labor of love, I know, but I know a bunch of students that were very appreciative, and their parents as well, so thank you.
We
very
had a
much.
lot of fun with that, and we learned a lot more about your school district as a result.
It was probably one of the best ways for you to really understand. So, thank you. So I have a first question and then a second, and maybe you want to come back to me, Madam Chair. But so it looks as if you have a lot of experience in like media, digital media, broadcast. But I'd like to know a little bit more about if you have some, just more broadly, direct marketing experience. So you did talk about what we're trying to do here is get very laser-like focused on raising our enrollment. I mean, cutting to the chase.
Right.
And we have obviously very different segments that we're trying to market our schools to, and as well as retain the students that we currently have. So I'm just curious, I can definitely see your experience in the broadcast and media world, but do you have, can you speak to any of the experience you might have in a broader direct marketing?
Yes. So our core competency, our core business is what started out as video, but it's largely marketing now. And we work with our clients across many different scopes, and to that point, to pinpoint exactly what they're trying to achieve. And so we have a process that we've developed, much like other marketing firms. We start out with an assessment. We understand clearly what their goals are, and we work in partnership with them to make sure that we're using media and the different types in our media plan to be able to achieve those goals. I think it's our job to also. I mean, we're a consultant as well, so we want to see what have you worked on in the past? Did it work? What worked about it? What did not work about it? And we'd like to think that we're very innovative, and we're going to introduce new, non-traditional ways of reaching your market and gaining what it is that you're trying to gain. And I'm also going to have Kim jump in here as well.
Yeah, to answer your question about the direct mail, I think some firms just go to direct mail because they've always done direct mail, and they make a lot of money on direct mail. There's a lot of margin in it, and so I think we're cautious in saying, go all in direct mail because that's what you've always done. I think I talked a little bit about omni-channel marketing, and I think that's really building a comprehensive marketing strategy that knows this segment responds to direct mail, and we know how to track it. We'll force them to call a dedicated phone number or a dedicated website so we can see, did that direct mail actually work? But we don't want to rely on just digital or just direct mail or just broadcast. I think it's so important to think about it holistically and how we can maximize those marketing dollars. So I think direct mail is a part of the mix. It's not the only part of the mix. But I think to your point, you're spot on. Some people they feel popular when they go to the mailbox and they get direct mail and they read every single word. Is that everyone? No. But is it some people? Yeah, and we need to reach out to those people. So does that answer your question?
Yes. I wasn't really speaking specifically about direct mail, but
Okay.
marketing, the overall strategy.
Yes.
Do you want me to wait? So my second question, on the slide deck that you gave, you did indicate you have some clients on there in the education space. I will tell you that some of them gave me pause, and let me explain why. If you were to work with us, the information that we would have to share with you would be extremely sensitive. It is highly competitive in this market right now. And some of the folks that are on your client list, I believe, may be receiving funding from organizations that have not been aligned with us in the past, and that is a concern to me. So I felt it fair to bring it up to you so that you might, I don't know if you want to address it or not, but I just need to let you know that that is a concern.
Understand.
And I guess one of the things I would want to hear maybe is, you did say you were a lean, mean fighting machine, but how would you address that concern?
Well, I think we value this relationship very, very much, and the other work we've done with some of the other organizations has just been a one-off virtual event here, not a body of work like this, and a true long-term partnership is what we're striving for. So I think, at a minimum, we be absolutely comfortable signing an NDA, and I don't know if you do that with your other partners, but I don't think that would be an issue at all. And I don't think that, if we got this type of partnership, it would not be something that we'd go seek other partners that are your competitors. That's certainly not our intent at all. So, as Cece mentioned, those other engagements were just one-offs, had nothing to do with marketing strategy, recruitment strategy, a very virtual event, very one-off. And so I think, that would be, again, this partnership makes so much sense for us, and I think we could really help you guys. And if you felt that signing an NDA or whatever would help appease that concern, I think we'd be absolutely happy to do that.
Mr.
Cece,
Hogan?
I don't know if you want to add anything else, or? Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Definitely appreciate it. A couple of questions. Well, one comment, and I guess maybe one or two questions. On the comment side, appreciate you offering up the NDA. NDAs are very difficult to enforce, is the challenge, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily prevent people from having conversations. So appreciate it, but it doesn't really sort of get us to where we need from a comfort level. At least I'll just speak for myself on that particular element. So I've heard a lot about sort of the very tactical things that you guys would do to help us. What I'm missing a little bit is, can you maybe give us a very specific example where you've developed a marketing strategy? Because frankly, that's what we're looking for here, is we don't have that sort of internal competency today, and we want to go build that competency out as part of this effort beyond just sort of getting the help with the strategy itself. So can you talk specifically around where you guys have developed a strategy?
I am newer to the team, so I will have Cece speak to that, because she has the whole breadth of knowledge of all the experience.
Okay, so yes, I think I think we're off to a good start. First and foremost, we've already had a working relationship with you. We know the school district for the most part. We know you already have a full body of research that you've already contracted. So we have a good starting point, and I think to get to where to the root of your question is. It's going to take good segmentation work, because we know, to Kim's point, and we know that there's going to be certain segments of the community or gaps that we're going to try to fill. So I really, other than actually sitting with your team and going through going through the assessment process, it would be tough for me to nail down exact specific strategies until we can do a little bit more fact finding.
Yeah, sorry, let me maybe rephrase. An example of where you've worked with another client to develop a marketing strategy, right, specifically. I understand that you're coming in sort of not really fresh, right?
Right.
But, just an example of a previous client, and then maybe if you can elaborate on your point around you've already got a bunch of the research, I'd be interested to know, like, how did that come about?
Right, so I guess a client that I could provide would be, I'll use a sports team, for example, because I think that's probably one of my biggest frames of reference right now, one of the fresh ones. We got a call to work with the San Jose Sharks. It's hockey. It's, Latinos don't necessarily marry up well to hockey. But we knew that we had a big opportunity because it was on the West Coast. It's San Jose. There's lots of Latinos. They have a ready-made market there. And so, we knew that there was a couple of low-hanging fruit when we spoke to the team. We knew that we had a lot of challenges they had a lot of challenges in front of them in terms of finding a ride media partner. How do you create enthusiasm about a sport that doesn't necessarily draw Latinos to it? But we were able to, we told them we needed to work with some of the people that they had in place. So when we toured the center, most of the people that were working there are Latino. They're doing all the work. They're doing all the back end work. And I was talking to my husband. I was like, we just need to start with their employees, and they're going to help us figure out the best marketing strategy. And so, yeah, sure enough, we were able to engage them. They were able to help us and point us in the right direction of the different centers of influence that we would want to engage right away. And then we were able to utilize a toolbox that hockey was, what they did have, and that was an example too of us looking to what current assets already existed that we could customize to fit our end goal of attracting that fan base. They had an incredible social media digital toolbox. Why? Because hockey has to work a lot harder than the NFL or MLB to gain fans. So they don't have the benefit of big media contracts. So they're very, very heavy on the digital content side. So we were able to work with them and build a playbook that specifically resonated with the Latino audience in language, in Spanglish, because we also knew that most of that's an example of doing our homework, most of that community is bilingual, but they choose to listen in Spanish. Why? Because they have multi-generational households. So we were able to work with them and develop a strategy in Spanglish using heavy digital social media. And without a media broadcast partner, a radio broadcast partner, we were able to go from 0 listeners to like 14,000 in like 6, 7, or 8 games. So that's an example of, working with the client, already determining what assets they already had in place, where were some non-traditional, for us it was easy. They just didn't see it. It was right in front of them, and they didn't see that their employees were going to be one of their best mouthpieces in the beginning, and using them as an opportunity to build out the rest of the strategy. That was a small piece of it. And then also, of course, working with centers of influence. So would we do really well? We're rooted in the community. Yes, we do work with a lot of clients. Why? Because people know who we are in the community. We show up at all the events, we serve on boards, our employees they serve on committees, they do the work. We love our city. And I think that's why people know and they trust us. And so we know we're going to use some non-traditional ways to build a strategy. And it's not just going to be media. It's going to be community activations. It's going to be identifying centers of influence. And that is how we're going to help you create top-of-mind awareness, trust, and an authentic relationship in the multicultural community.
It is 6:30, and so I need to pose a question to my colleagues. I know that this is a topic that I think we're still trying to get additional information on, and we have additional questions. So I'm trying to determine if this is an item that needs to be tabled, because we're literally at the conclusion of executive session at this time. If it needs to be tabled to next meeting and we compile the kinds of questions that we still have remaining, and then we can take this back up at the business meeting at the end of March. Can I get a sense of this? Because I feel like there's still additional questions that haven't had a chance to be aired. Can I get a sense of, okay. So I think, Dr. Do you have a concern about us tabling this until the next meeting? Any specific impact that you'd be aware of that would give us a chance to get to, because frankly, we're not going to take action at this moment.
Okay.
So I want to thank you so much for coming, and we will make sure that we collect the questions that we have and direct that administration. And we will table this item for our business meeting on March 24th.
Okay.
And thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing your team this evening and for walking through a little bit about your agency.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
So here I've got to look to my colleagues again. I would like to move the board services budget review to the next meeting. That way we'll have adequate time to discuss the board budget. Everyone has received the board budget and the notes that go with that budget. And I think there's a couple of adjustments that are going to need to be made within the budget that I can already see. So I want to ask my colleagues to submit to June and to me any questions about adjustments that you think need reflected in this is our board budget. And then my colleague Rita Cortez had wanted us to walk through some of the summary material that she had prepared for tonight. So, Ms. Cortez, what would you like to do? We could, okay, I love that. Go for it.
Very quickly. In your book, there is a page that says 31021 contract presentation questions for board. Essentially what this is asking you is to look at the way contracts are presented to the board for approval, and it just walks you through 3 key questions and a 4th that's kind of optional. Number 1, what information that's provided is helpful in your understanding of contracts? Number 2, what information in these documents either does not add to your understanding or creates confusion in your review of contracts? And number 3, what information is not provided that you believe should be? So sometimes I've heard people talk about, I'd like to know if this is a renewal or this is a new contract. I'd like to know if this includes MBE or WBE, those types of things. Those are just in there to start your thinking. The document is available. It can be sent to you in Word format so that you can complete it and send back any comments. Ideally, we'd like to get these back by next Tuesday so that we can discuss them in the Finance Committee meeting next Wednesday.
Thank you. And the information is very easy to look at. And I think that the form is writable, so you could write into that document. Dr. Bedell, do you have any final announcements before we transition to our general meeting?
Yeah, I think we can just come back to it around the property tax appeals. We have a couple of slides that we'll share with you all during this actual board meeting. And then we did want to let you all know that from an admission standpoint, we've already submitted our letters of approvals or acceptances were sent out to families. David Rand actually wanted to update the board quickly on where we are with that, and I think that would just take less than 2 minutes. It's important.
All right, thank you very much. We got our initial offer letters out on Wednesday. We were 48 hours behind the charters, we were trying to get them out on Monday. But it was really a great job of collaboration between IT, communications, and admissions to really, we've made a lot of changes this year. And not only did we make those changes, we also accelerated our timeline. We got the lottery done before we sent out the initial offers. And so next year, we're looking at accelerating that timeline so we can be ahead of the charters. And just, right.
With that concludes the executive session. And I know that my colleagues have not had any kind of a break. So what I would like to do is, it's already 6:36. I want to invite my colleagues, if we can go ahead and begin the meeting, take the roll and approve the agenda, and then not everybody jump up at once, but feel free to step out as you need. So thank you, because I do have to have a quorum here. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our board monitoring meeting of March 10th. We're very glad to have you all here, both those of you who are in the room with us today and those who are watching via live stream. It's been wonderful for us to get back together again, but we've had our struggles a little bit as we've adjusted to our setup and returning to using microphones and all the other kinds of things. So bear with us if we seem a little clunky. It's been a while since we've been back together in person, but we've really enjoyed ourselves being together this evening. So we're happy to see those of you who are with us here tonight. So with this, I will ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Ms. Mance?
Here.
Present. Ms. Cortez? Here. Present. Mr. Watt? Here. Ms. Wolf?
Here.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and I'm turning to the secretary because I do believe we need to amend the agenda to include a property tax assessment report. That will come right under the superintendent's report. So it would be in order to receive a motion to approve the agenda. If my colleagues are willing, amended to include a property tax assessment report under superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Cortez? Yes.
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Wolsey?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Bedell, I'll go ahead and turn this over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are at the point where we are ready to begin our recognitions. We will have our Scholar Superstars, terrific teammates, outstanding administrators, and community champion. And for this presentation, I'll pass it over to Ms. Kelly Waitchell, our Chief over Communications and Marketing.
Good evening again. We are going to start with our PowerPoint here, and we are going to experiment with virtual recognitions while we are all in person. So I'm going to wait for the PowerPoint to be brought up and make sure that we've confirmed, Ms. Kolkmeyer, that our virtual participants are online via their link. All right, so we will ensure that the virtual link is up and running, and then we'll get started. I'm going to walk over here and make sure we are. So the way this is going to work is you'll be able to see the recognees on screen. So we're waiting to get them on screen so you can see them as we're talking about them. Thank you for being patient. Even when we're in person, we're looking at technology workarounds. It does, it does. And we actually have one of our honorees in person tonight, so that's exciting. Dr. Irvin's back there, and he's sitting very quietly. The best high school ever, according to Mr. Abarca. Yep, we're just waiting for the students to come up on the screen so that you again can see them as we talk about their honors.
This is the fun of working in both an in-person and virtual environment. So maybe we'll all be a little more sympathetic to our teachers who are having to do hybrid as well as in person.
Right. And our technology team is fantastic. Of course, you know this, but they're trying to toggle multiple things right now as we get this produced. So thanks for the patience. Okay, Ms. Kolkmeyer, do we have them up? Just to make sure they're going to be able to see us on, or see you guys see them on the screen here for their faces. Here we go. Hello, everybody. We see you. Can you hear us, team, on screen? Can you hear us? A little bit.
I can't hear anything.
So, Ms. Kolkmeyer, I wonder if the source needs to come by me so that they can hear me speaking, maybe? We'll see what Brian says. Okay. All right. And can you hear me now? Am I the KCPS staff? What's that? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? David Williams, can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Jimmy Bullard, can you hear me now? She's shaking her head no. Brian, do we want to use this computer and unmute this computer? Let's see. Am I the KCPS staff? Yes, you are. Let's unmute that. Let's try. Jimmy Bullard. Yeah. I'm going to get a little bit closer. Jimmy Bullard, can you hear me?
Slightly.
Slightly. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I'm going to give this back to you, Ms. Kolkmeyer, because this is going to reverb if I have it up here. Okay, we're going to roll with the show. And I'm going to speak as loudly as I can. Hello, I hear you. So first, we're going to recognize a scholar superstar from Northeast Middle School.
Can anyone hear me?
We can hear you. I guess, where's the source, I guess, for the Zoom?
Yes, I hear you.
Hey! Okay.
But can you hear outside people? Because I can't hear.
I can't hear any. I can only hear you and the young lady I just spoke with.
This is very comical, and we apologize. So we're going to go through, thank you. We're going to go through the recognitions here and have you wave at us. And first is from Northeast Middle School, 8th grader Kabatoon. And this recognee, the teacher has had the privilege to have Kaba as a student twice now as this teacher changed positions. He was always a kind student but seemed kind of disinterested in school. He started his 8th grade in the same pattern, just getting by, uninterested, but he had written in one assignment in his second quarter of 8th grade that he was going to focus on and do his very best, and he did. He turned in awesome work for second quarter and raised his grades tremendously. Congratulations to Kabatoon, 8th grader at Northeast Middle School. Next is Ivan Meza Escalante, 4th grader at Foreign Language Academy. Ivan arrived to the United States in early 2020. Being new to our country, Ivan's understanding of the English language is limited, yet he is the first one in our virtual meetings every single day. He works diligently, not only in his core classes, but also with his ELL teacher and in small groups as well. He's so determined to succeed and grow academically that he completes over 4 hours of iReady work each week between math and reading. He's not afraid to take risks in class, and he also adds to whole group virtual lessons. Ivan's love for learning is so refreshing to me as a teacher, and his desire to succeed is evident every single day. I'm so lucky to get to be his teacher during a pandemic. Ivan at Foreign Language Academy, 4th grader. Annabelle Medina, 1st grader in the Kansas City Virtual Academy. This student goes above and beyond in her work every day. She strives to be her best at all times, all while traveling the country as a wrestler. She does wrestling tournaments. She is encouraging to her classmates and wants us all to be our best. Annabelle is a true team player and a superstar student. Congratulations, Annabelle. And when you see her slide, you'll see her pictures of her trophies, and in her wrestling gear, she looks fantastic. And we have siblings, Alfred Dupree, and I'll start with Alfred and then his sister Ariana. Alfred is a 2nd grader at Benjamin Banneker Elementary School. Alfred consistently attends the math intervention small group. His camera is always on and he's actively engaged, and even takes his iPad with him in his car. He is kind, patient, and intelligent, and I am lucky to have the opportunity to work with him. Alfred Dupree, 2nd grader at Benjamin Banneker Elementary. And his sister, 3rd grader, Ariana Dupree, at Benjamin Banneker Elementary School. Ariana is the definition of a scholar superstar. Virtual learning has been extremely difficult and has presented students with many challenges, but she has handled every obstacle with ease. She logs in every day on time and with a huge smile on her face. She not only actively participates in all the subjects, but she encourages her classmates and leads by example. She's such a bright student, and along with her hard work, determination, and kindness, she will change the world. Ariana is a type of student that teachers will remember long after she has left their classroom, and she is a true joy to teach. Ariana Dupree. And we have Muskab Abdul Kadir, 4th grader at Whittier Elementary School. Ms. Cab shows up every day ready to put in 110%, not just most days, but every single day. He truly has a passion for learning. He seeks challenges, pushes himself to grow, listens to understand in a way that many adults could even learn from. Ms. Cab is humble, responsible, and kind. If he doesn't know something, he asks. He's innovative. For example, recently we had an asynchronous day. I posted the study hall link that for some reason didn't work. Even before I realized that it didn't work, he'd found the correct link and posted it for all of his classmates. I still do not understand how he solved the issue. He has the goal of running a business, possibly the world, and working to make sure teachers get better pay. Love that. He has even talked about opening up his own school where he can make sure students and teachers have everything they need. He motivates me to be a better teacher and person. Muscab represents all the beauty and brilliance that is KCPS. And it's lovely. And our last student is Hassan Abdikadir, 9th grader at East High School. Hassan is a consistent and persistent leader in all his academic pursuits. He's not afraid to ask questions and step outside his comfort zone, making him an inspiration to students and staff alike. Hassan is a superstar because he's not just responsible and high achieving, he absolutely exemplifies kindness, resilience, and bravery. Congratulations, Hassan. So I really wish we could hear these students right now respond to that, and I don't know if we're going to be able to. Brian, are they able to respond right now? If they unmute. So kids, if you can unmute and you want to say anything, I would love to hear from you right now.
Hello?
Hi. Tell us who you are.
I can't hear because I couldn't hear anything you said. You sound like you were whispering and stuff.
So tell us who you are.
Huh?
This is a challenge. Tell us who you are.
Okay.
And where do you go to school?
I go to school at Whittier Elementary.
Well, we're really proud of you. Congratulations. Do you want to say anything to the audience today?
Yeah.
Go for it.
It's called, I didn't know why I got picked, but it was called Thanks for Anybody Who Picked Me.
Well, thank you for being an amazing student. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
Are there any other students who can hear that would like to talk about being a scholar superstar? Okay. Well, congratulations, kids. And we want you back in person so we can do this with you in front of us. Thank you very much for being here tonight. All right. Oh, there is our wrestler.
Hi.
Hi, I see you. So, Annabelle, can you tell us hello? Hi, Annabelle.
Hi.
Tell us about yourself, Annabelle.
Well, I'm a wrestler, that's why I have this headgear.
We saw pictures of you in your wrestling gear. Tell us what grade you're in and what you love about school.
I'm first grade, but I'm 7 because my birthday already passed. And, well, I'm in this gardener's class, and I like the math most because I keep raising my hand, but one of my classmates keep getting the question, and I was like, come on.
Well, Annabelle, thank you for being here, and congratulations on a Scholar Superstar and all of your wrestling pursuits. We love that you're part of the KCVA. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think I see the Dupree family here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Hey, Duprees, do you want to say a couple words of wisdom for us?
Yes.
What does it mean to be a Scholar Superstar at Benjamin Banneker Elementary?
What is it?
What does it mean to you? Do your best. What does it mean to you? You do your best. I do my best.
You do. Alfred, I see you too. Alfred, what does this Scholar Superstar mean to you?
What does it mean to me? Look up there.
We're putting them on the spot.
What does it mean to be picked?
To be picked. Well, congratulations, Dupree. Thank you for being part of KCPS. We appreciate you. All right. So thank you for being here. We'll move on to our terrific teammates, and I see some of those terrific teammates here, and I'm going to talk as loud as I can. I feel like I'm yelling. But our first terrific teammate is Melvin Brown, and Melvin is a parent and community coordinator at Paseo Academy of Fine and Performing Arts. Melvin goes above and beyond his duties. Mr. Brown is so passionate and caring. He helps as much as he can, and when he can't help, he looks into other resources. Mr. Brown has been helping me and my family in our time of need, and we are grateful and appreciative of everything he does for us. He puts parents' and students' needs before his own. He goes out of his way with resources for those in need. Congratulations, Mr. Brown. Our next terrific teammate is Julie Arnold, elementary math and science teacher at Success Academy at Knott's. Hi, Miss Arnold. Miss Arnold is a tremendous communicator with students, their families, and her colleagues. She's a positive, kind, and patient in all situations. Teachers as well as students feel comfortable turning to her for advice in creating online learning platforms. She is technology savvy and will be ready to offer assistance or help when needed. She has purchased various learning platforms which she uses daily to increase interest and provide an alternative learning plan for individual students. During this online COVID learning phase, she has developed incentive-based motivational opportunities for her students. Congratulations, Ms. Arnold, Success Academy at Knott's. Next, we have Leon Bailey, who's an elementary music teacher at Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School. Mr. Bailey always has a smile on his face despite what may be happening in or out of the building. He has a wonderful attitude and doesn't mind helping and lending a hand when needed. As a music teacher in our building, Mr. Bailey rocks. Congratulations, Mr. Bailey. We have Susan Phillips, 5th grade English language arts at Gladstone Elementary School. There's Miss Phillips. This is spoken from a teacher who nominated Miss Phillips. I was recently hospitalized. While in the hospital, Susan took it upon herself to schedule all of my parent-teacher conferences, called every family to ask them their preference on hybrid or KCVA, and took attendance every day. She went above and beyond. This was done on top of doing all of the same work for her own homeroom. She's a true teammate who helped me out when I needed it the most without questioning it or wanting to take credit for it. She is simply amazing. Congratulations, Miss Phillips. And our last terrific teammate is Captain Jeff Gilmore, Assistant Site-Based Manager in the Department of Safety and Security. Jeff Gilmore is an African-American male currently working in our backyard in the Safety and Security Department that made history in March 1987 to become the first African-American male to be the chief of the Jackson County Parks, Safety, and Enforcement Department. We wanted to take time to recognize Captain Jeff Gilmore today for this and for his service to KCPS. We recognize Jeff Gilmore this evening. Congratulations, Captain Gilmore. Now, can any of you terrific teammates hear us and like to say anything in response to your recognition tonight?
I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for the recognition. It's something that I really didn't pay that much attention to, and my director realized what was going on, and he just said, "Hey, I'm going to nominate you for this." But it was something that I did in 1987, and it was a feat to get it done and get it accomplished. But I did what I had to do, and I guess I'm in the history books for Jackson County.
Congratulations, Captain Gilmore. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. And you're very it's like you're in a tunnel almost. We can barely hear you.
I apologize. I'm so sorry. We're trying to do this hybrid, and we just appreciate you being here. Miss Phillips, I see you. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm Miss Arnold. I just wanted to again echo his thanks for everybody involved, and especially I love what I do. I love the kids. I love my team. I think they're all, everybody, the team at Knott's makes my job easy, so it's easy to be. I think they're all terrific teammates, and I just want to thank everyone involved for this honor, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Kate, this is Melvin, and I just want to say, I hope you hear me, by the way. I just want to say I'm very grateful for being out this special honor for our district. I'm happy to say this second year receiving the
I just wanted to say for the recognition, I didn't do anything that
There was a big delay in that. Okay. Again, I think we're having to chuckle because this is very comical, and we appreciate what everyone is doing to make this work. Okay, thank you, terrific teammates. We're going to go on to our outstanding administrators and finish this up. And we're lucky to have, as an outstanding administrator here, Dr. Wayman Irvin. Dr. Irvin is the principal at Northeast High School. Dr. Irvin brings passion and unique skill sets as a veteran in education. He has created a culture of success and accountability unencumbered by excuses. Our attendance rate, student performance, teacher ratings, teacher satisfaction, professional growth as administrators have all improved. Congratulations, Dr. Irvin. You make a difference for Northeast High School. And he's here! Congratulations, Dr. Irvin. And David Williams, the principal at James Elementary School. We're nominating Mr. Williams as the Outstanding Administrator of the Year because he always demonstrates humble servant leadership and a genuine care and concern for all members of the James community, from teachers and staff to parents to students and to the special education students and their parents, who I personally serve in my role as occupational therapist. Mr. Williams attends IEP meetings for nearly every one of his students. He's interested in every staff member and interacts with parents and guardians in a very friendly and caring way. He's always very present in meetings and concerned about students' well-being. Mr. Williams, congratulations on being an outstanding administrator.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to work here, and I've got a great team that I work with at James, so my thanks to all of them as well.
Congratulations, sir. Dr. Jimmy Ballard, principal at Longfellow Elementary School. During this most difficult time, Dr. Ballard has been an amazing support to the staff, students, and families of Longfellow. Her communication with everyone is amazing because she wants everyone to feel comfortable and up to date with what's going on. She takes care of us and holds our Longfellow family together. She's the heartbeat of our school and keeps us running no matter the challenges, and we're lucky to have her. Congratulations, Dr. Ballard. And I think, Ivan, have you joined us from FLA? It's hard to see everybody on the screen here. Dr. Ballard, anything you'd like to say?
audio. Yo soy de México, en la escuela de Fort Language Academia, y vengo de México.
Congratulations, Ivan.
Me llamo Iván.
Thank you. Dr. Ballard, you're last.
I would just like to say thank you. I could not hear who nominated me. I couldn't hear anything, but thank you. I appreciate working with my wonderful staff at Longfellow. I appreciate being nominated, and this is just a great honor. So I'm very thankful and humbled by it. I guess I'll see who nominated me later because I could not see anything or hear anything. But it was amazing, so thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, this is an oversight on my part. We also wanted to recognize Jasmine Salick tonight. She's vice principal at Northeast High School, and this was written about Miss Salick. We meet every other week and talk about what's working and what I need to help with or any concerns. She's been so supportive and is always making time to speak when I need it. She understands the world of exceptional education and offers suggestions when I have a student need with the distance learning. She has been a great person to help me when we have to get student contacts done with our clinicians and therapists. Congratulations, Miss Salick. All right. All right, and then Jasmine, I don't know if you can hear us. Anything that you'd like to say?
I would just like to say this is such an honor. I couldn't do it without my staff, teachers, admin team, community members, families, or students. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And couldn't do this without my team.
Excellent. Thank you all. We appreciate your time tonight. All right, next is our Community Champion feature. And Brian, we do have a Community Champion video that we will show for this portion of the recognitions. Tonight, our Community Champion we will feature is Maddie Rhodes, and we are excited to show you all of the wonderful partnerships that we have with Maddie Rhodes through our video.
Maddie Rhodes Center is now in its second century of community service to Kansas City. And working with the Kansas City Public Schools is an opportunity for us to really work with the population that our organization was established to work with. And that is to work with the most needy and vulnerable of our city, to engage others, to learn about them, and to provide resources. We take it as an honor to be able to work with families and students in Kansas City, Missouri, in particular in our urban core. And collectively with the Kansas City Public Schools, we are finding ways to leverage each other's resources to make the best lives possible for all of our families and kids.
From Primitivo Gracie Elementary. Here to send a special shout out to Maddie Rhodes. Thank you so much for going above and beyond during these really challenging times. You guys have been able to support us by providing our families with food assistance and rent assistance and holiday meals. In addition, you guys have found innovative ways to continue with your social emotional support. So, from the Garcia family, we are so appreciative and thank you so much.
We view our partnership with the Kansas City Public Schools as two friends working hand in hand to resolve community issues. For many of our families and for many of our young students, there are a number of barriers that prevent them from being academically successful, whether that being emergency assistance needed with regards to paying rent, utilities, even having a place to live, help with school uniforms, proper school supplies, or with emotional support. Maddie Rhodes Center, one of our main roles with the Kansas City Public Schools is to provide therapy. It is something that we've done as an organization for more than 75 years. And in addition to that, we are responding to critical social service needs that our families and students present to us daily. And we view our work with the Kansas City Public Schools as really creating a stronger community, one from an academic standpoint, but also from a social and emotional standpoint.
Dr. Bedell, before we go to the next item, I just want to thank your team member, Kelly Wachel, for her bravery in undertaking that process. That was really a mark of courage. And I think it's also an example for us that we have to roll with the punches. So thank you, Ms. Wachel, for hanging in there. And we're going to figure this out as we go. So thank you. Dr. Bedell, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, things will get better as the vaccinations pick up. So we will hopefully be able to do all of this in person in the very near future. So I do want to congratulate our scholars, superstars, terrific teammates, outstanding administrators, and our community champion, former board member John Fierro. Job well done for all. As we get ready to move into our next set of items, before we vote on, actually before we move to regular business items, I think we have an update that we wanted to provide to the board and the community on property taxes. So I'll allow for Ms. Quinley.
They said this was working. There we go. Yep. Okay.
Maddie Rose Center.
Am I turning or is somebody else? I want to go back one more. All right, can you go back one more? Guys, can you go back one slide, please? A year is a long time. We have gotten terribly out of practice, and we've added hurdles and challenges to this, and so I apologize. There we go. So at the request of board leadership, we're going to just really quickly update you on property tax appeals. Just a reminder, 2019 was our reassessment year, and so that was a year and 3 months ago in December of 2019 when those taxes would have been paid. This is a list of the taxes that are currently sitting at the State Tax Commission under appeal. They total $11.7 million of 2019-20 revenues that have not yet come to the district while they await that process. I did have a conversation with the State Tax Commission today, and they acknowledge they are overwhelmed with appeals across the state. Most of these hearings were expected to take place in February. They have been delayed to June, which means we will not receive these proceeds during the current fiscal year. We did budget to receive roughly 70%, trying to give some allowance for what might be the results of the appeal process, but it's going to actually be zero. So we are trailing behind in property tax revenues significantly this year due to this holdup. And then, are we both doing it? Sorry. And so then very quickly, this is the list of current appeals from 2020 that are being held locally at the county. And you can see that's $7.7 million. There are a couple of big players on this slide who were also on the previous slide. So there are a couple of organizations that make up the majority of these funds. This money sits for 90 days from when it was paid, which probably was the very end of December, until it is released to us or that company files a suit locally or appeals on up to the State Tax Commission. Long story short, there's about $19 million of revenues that we should have collected either a year ago or within recent months that are being held up through this process, making it really difficult for us to project exactly what this year is going to be like. But now the delays have occurred, we can project what this year is going to be like, and it's going to be well behind original revenue budgets.
Thank you, Ms. Quinley.
Dr. Bedell, I think we might have just a couple of questions or comments. Mr. Bart.
Yeah, I'll take this off because I think this is important. Ms. Quinley, if I, as a taxpayer of Jackson County, don't pay my taxes, I get assessed a penalty, right?
Correct.
Does that happen in these situations where the appeals process? So, in this situation, let's just take the Country Club Plaza, who hasn't paid their $4 million of taxes, has appealed. This past year, as well as the previous year, they're not assessed any penalties for the delay in their delinquency in paying their property taxes, which are required.
That is correct, although to be in this process, they have actually paid them.
Oh.
They've paid them and they're being held in escrow. We will get interest on that when we get it, that will be assessed back to them, but they aren't fined any kind of penalty because they did pay them, but paid them under protest.
Understandable. So that's at least good. But the reality is there's $19 million from corporate interest currently being held that are not helping our students, that are not helping our classrooms in one of the most challenging global pandemics that we'll ever face in this entire process. So I think it's important that we address this in public, and so, Madam Chair, thank you for allowing this discussion to happen here, because as we move about our business, the Country Club Plaza being one of the largest players here, as well as, unfortunately, Crown Properties, it looks like, this is something the public needs to know. So, as treasurer, I think it's prudent that we evaluate this $19 million and do everything in our power to collect this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And I don't see any additional questions or comments. Dr. Bedell, Mr. Wasserstrom, please.
Yeah, Manny, I think it's unfair to put Crown Properties in the same class as the Country Club Plaza. Crown Properties is seeking to improve their situation, but if you look at the fair market value of their property, their tax assessment is very, very close to the appraised value, whereas the plaza got a great deal to begin with, a thievery deal. They got a mediocre increase. They need to be increased again when Gail Beatty gets around to doing the next round of assessments. They should pay their fair share. Taxes are a burden to everybody, but there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be hesitant about paying somebody's fair share. Everybody should pay their fair share of taxes, including the plaza.
Thank you, Mr. Wasserstrom. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to hand this back to Dr. Bedell.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So we will move on to our school and employee calendar for 2021-2022. We'll have Dr. Collier to present this.
All right, good evening, Dr. Bedell, Board Chair Manser, board members, KCPS staff, families, community. I'm bringing forward this evening 3 calendar items that we are seeking the board to approve. And and those 3 items are the school year 22 calendar for our students, also our 12-month employee calendar for next fiscal year, and then we'd like to make an amendment to the current calendar. And I'm going to cover all of that in just a moment. So the features of the school year 22 calendar, you will see that it is a bit longer than the calendar normally is, with more student days at 179 and total teacher days 194. The purpose of this is so that we can address some of the learning loss, or we're not really terming it learning loss anymore, but opportunities for student learning acceleration. We wanted to make sure that this calendar allowed us to do that, and so that's the reason for the additional days to the calendar, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in just a moment. The teachers will report back on Thursday, August 12th, 2021, and there are 7 work days prior to the students returning. This will give us time to have the professional development that we need with our teachers. 2.5 of those days are designated to the Teachers Institute that we've been doing annually, which has been a great success, and we want to continue that this year. And then 2.5 of those days will be teacher work days, so they can prepare in their classrooms for our students' return. Our students' first day will be Monday, August 23rd, 2021, and then their final day of school is Friday, June 10th, 2022, and it is a half day for our students, but it will be a full day for our staff. So these additions to the calendar, we've added 3 PLC days, or what we're also terming deep data dive days. Look at that alliteration there, that D. I just noticed that. Sorry, I got excited about that. These PLC days are non-student days, and this is an opportunity for our teachers at the end of the quarter to dig down into our student performance data, to look at that data and determine where there are possibly gaps in students' learning, looking at the Missouri Student Learning Standards for content and grade level, and determining what it is our students need, and they will then formalize lessons and plans to address that student learning needs, and they will do that on those 6 student intervention days. And the way that we've broken it down is there's 1 PLC day after quarter 1, 2, and 3, followed by 2 student intervention days. So they'll have that day of deep data planning and getting into that data, formalizing learning plans, and then they will have 2 student intervention days that will follow that. And once again, that's on quarters 1, 2, and 3. Then within the school year, there are 2 teacher work days, and these are also non-student days, time for our teachers to prepare and to look at student learning and then devise plans from there that they will follow up with the students on once they return. And then there are also 2 parent-teacher conference days. These are non-student days. There is a slight change to our parent-teacher conference days this year in that that we will only have 1 each semester. If you look at the current calendar, we had a day and a half devoted to parent-teacher conferences, but because we've added these additional days to the calendar, these 9 days, we went ahead and reverted back to the 1 day for parent conferences in each semester. And you can see the dates where those will fall on the calendar, and then the hours for that are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then we have our 12-month employee calendar. The only thing to really note there is that's 261 work days for our 12-month employees. There will also be a total of 18 holidays, and those holidays mirror those that are on the school calendar. And then the amendment that we like to make to the current calendar, school year 21, the year that we're currently in, right now on that calendar, April 5th is a teacher work day. However, we were looking at that and we knew that our students are beginning to phase back in, and we like to maximize that student learning time as early as we can as our students are returning. So we met with the union and we talked about this, and we're all in agreement that we'd like for April 5th to be a student instructional day, and then May 28th later in the year will be devoted to that teacher work day. So we just did a swap there, but the main reason why we've done that is we want to get our students back in as quickly as possible in our classrooms so that we can begin working with them face to face, and then delaying that teacher work day. So those are the 3 items, 3 calendar items that we're bringing before you this evening, and we are requesting approval.
Are there any questions about these calendar changes that have been proposed? Do we take action on these as each individual item, or can those changes be adopted as in an entire package, Dr. Bedell?
We presented it to you all as an entire package.
So with that, I would seek a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve school calendar for the 2021-2022 fiscal year and the amendment to the 2020-2021 school calendar. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
Thank you. The calendar changes are approved. Dr. Bedell, I think it comes back to you.
As a part of our workshop presentation, we have two presentations: student discipline update, and the purpose of this presentation is to make sure that what was requested by this board back during the first semester, or actually during the summer, around the work that we needed to do with our student handbook, student code of conduct, but also taking a deeper look at what would it take for our school district to enter into not being a district that doesn't suspend for students in grades K through 5. So we've done our full due diligence. I had an opportunity to review the presentation. Was very pleased with the thoroughness of it, and I think you all will be too. We're not asking the board to take action on this item at this time, rather to give you all an update on what it would take for us to pull this off if we were, and what the fiscal implications will be. And so what we will do is to have Dr. Letitia Woodley, our Executive Director over Student Support Services, to lead us through this presentation, and then we will come back and we will do our board policy 1.2.1 graduation update.
All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Bedell, Board Chair Mansers, and member of the board.
It brings me great pleasure to present to you our Discipline Transformation Initiative as we work to try to transform our behavior response model in Kansas City Public Schools. As you guys know, we have been engaged in action research over the last year, looking at how do we redesign our discipline work within the school district. We have worked with our internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders to come up with our proposal for this evening. Some of our external partners that we've worked with has been More Squared, Maddie Rose Center, Alive and Well Communities, Center for Conflict Resolutions, Swot Health, and Children's Mercy. We've also worked with each and every school team and principal to look at their individual school data and to determine what supports are needed in order for us to address the discipline disparities that's within our school district. So one of the first things we looked at was our overall district data as far as suspensions in the early grades. As you look at this presentation here, you can see that when Dr. Bedell came on board as superintendent, this is one of our major focuses was to reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions within our school district. This is 3 years worth of trend data showing that we've had a decline in suspensions every year over the last 3 years. We dug a little deeper into this work and looked at each particular grade level to look at the suspensions, and then looked at each individual school per grade level about what schools were suspending what grade levels of students, and tried to determine what was the supports that was needed in order for us to combat this work. We also identified each additional reason why a child was suspended in Kansas City Public Schools over the last 3 years. And so we broke this data down, demonstrating this last year that we were in session for the full year, and identified the top areas in which we were seeing suspensions across our school district. The 2 areas that gave us most concern was the areas of chronic misconduct and disruptive school behavior. And those 2 areas gave us the most concern because these are students that are being referred for level 1 and level 2 infractions. And after they receive so many level 1 or level 2 infractions, then the school is able to suspend the students for out-of-school suspension. And so this notated that we had a lot of work to do in our school district, providing professional development to our teachers and to our administrators, and supports needed in this particular area on how do we address students being suspended for what could be looked at as really subjective measures of suspending students. And so this was a major concern for us, and you will speak to the work that we're doing with the professional development that we're doing in our school district. The next thing that we looked at was we met with each and every building, all 35 school principals, and did with the equity audits that was produced through our equity department, and looked at our suspension data based on race, based on subgroups like special education and ELL students, to kind of determine where the needs were in our individual subgroups and what disparities existed, and developed a plan to work with each individual school about what disparities existed within their buildings and a plan to address those disparities. We also did research across the country at what school districts had implemented suspension bans and what were the successful implementations of putting a suspension ban in place, and what was the lessons learned from each of the school district. On the screen, you will see our different school districts that we targeted our research in and gleaned from their experience of implementing such a suspension ban. What we found was the research was mixed, and what was most alarming was implementing a suspension ban without having the additional supports necessary to meet the needs of the school community in implementing such a ban. And so this is one of the research findings that we found, and it talked about the excessive burden that was placed on the school staff by not having additional supports in place when you try to implement a school ban. And this was alarming to us, and something that was a red flag to make sure that we did not fall into some of those same
same misfortunes as some of these school districts. When we think about the report that's been given by Dr. Collier as one of the top reasons why teachers leave our school district is because they do not feel supported when it comes to discipline of our students. And so we wanted to make sure when we presented this proposal that we wanted to make sure we balanced it with the level of support that's necessary in order for us to be effective in the measures in which we try to roll out a new policy. We also looked at administrators and their implementation of such a suspension ban. And this is an article by Education Week, and it talks about what administrators around the country that have tried to engage in this work are saying. And it says, around the country, some school administrators have said efforts to limit suspension leave schools without the necessary tools to keep them safe and free from disruptions. Some have argued that schools do not have the resources to successfully carry out alternative forms of discipline and student support, which may require additional staff, such as school psychologists and restorative practices coordinators. One of the models that we looked at that was a very successful model, and it had similar implementation plans that we have here in Kansas City Public Schools, and that has been the Chicago model. And the Chicago model calls for all principals to be trained in social and emotional learning practices, all teachers, counselors, and support staff to be trained on trauma restorative discipline. They implemented a SEL specialist in each network. They implemented restorative practices coaches for their high discipline schools. They trained security officers in bias, de-escalation, and mental health first aid. They implemented a comprehensive stakeholder support model for students, parents, and teachers, and created a supportive school certification for schools who implemented this model with fidelity. As you know, we have adopted the Missouri model for trauma-informed schools as our logic model for implementation. The Missouri model calls for a change in knowledge, a change in practice that leads to a change in culture, a change in policy, to an overall change in our system. It's with that, as we looked at the research, as we looked at our data, as we looked at our 4-year strategic plan of implementing the Missouri model for trauma-informed practices, it is today that we bring the recommendation to our school board to adopt the following policy. It is our recommendation that the Kansas City Public School directors adopt a policy in May 2021 that will be effective the beginning of the school year of 22-23 that bans the use of discretionary suspensions against children in pre-K through grades 5, except in incidents that the students are causing harm to others, harm to self, or in violations of law. And the rationale for us asking that the policy does not go into effect until 2022, it will allow us the opportunity to get the additional supports necessary and implement the training that's needed, as well as the job-embedded coaching to make sure that this policy is able to be implemented with fidelity. So the Kansas City model, these are the things that we will work to continue to do as well as implement in order for this suspension policy to be implemented with fidelity. All of our principals will be trained on social and emotional learning practices. All of our teachers and counselors and support staff will be trained on trauma and restorative discipline. We are totally transforming our student code of conduct. We would like to increase the number of school counselors at each school so that each school would have a full-time school counselor. Now, this is important because some of our elementary schools do not have full-time school counselors, and so we're not able to really provide the scope of work that we need to when there's schools that only have a counselor a couple days a week, and some schools have what they call split counselors, where you have one counselor that appears 2 days, and then a different counselor that comes to that school. And so you're not able to build relationships, and you're not able to really roll out the work that we need to without having a full-time school counselor in each building. We are implementing a trauma-informed care team at each school that reviews the data and responds to the equity audit work, and we meet with those trauma teams monthly. Also, utilizing the Missouri model indicators to identify those strategies and those priority indicators and track what's necessary for us to be on the continuum to become a model trauma-informed school district. We would also like to implement restorative practices coordinators across the school district through our 4-year plan. We would like to implement similar to the Chicago model, we would like to implement a comprehensive stakeholder support model for students, parents, and teachers, and create the supportive school certification for schools to implement with this model with fidelity. So implications to the school budget. So our current school budget, FY21, has 41.8 FTE allocations. Moving forward, we would like to increase those allocations to FY22 45 to 45 total counselors. And this is different than what's in your folder, because the new information is based on the new allocations that are provided for this school year. The information that's in your current presentation is from last school year's allocations. And this allocation includes both elementary school counselors as well as secondary counselors. And this will allow us to have a full-time school counselor in each building. Plus, also, we are seeing an increase in the number of students that are attending or proposing to attend Lincoln High School and looking to add an additional counselor at Lincoln due to the overflow of students that will be presented at that school. Our restorative justice budget implications. So in order for us to roll out restorative practices across the school district, this is our proposed budget over the next 4 years. We currently have the restorative justice program in 5 of our buildings. That is in, of course, in Southeast, which was our pilot program for the last couple years. We expanded that work this year to include Central Middle, Northeast Middle, Faxon Elementary, and Success at Anderson. We currently, all of our positions that are allocated under this budget currently are grant-funded positions, and that are 4 total positions. At the end of this year, those grant funds subside, and we will not have those grant funds any longer. So what I have done within my budget, in the student support budget, is I've had to make some tough decisions, and I've had to abolish some positions, some district level positions, to try to push money toward the schools to be able to help fund this program, because we know that it's effective. So currently I'm able to account for 2 of the 4 positions that are currently being asked for this evening due to my moving around funds and reallocating positions within my budget. But 2 of those positions we do not have funds for. I am in conversations with the grant funder about expanding the opportunity to continue funding those positions for me for a couple of years. The reason why I'm making that ask is because we're about to engage in Blueprint 2030 work, which will allow us to make some major adjustments within the school district, which I believe that will be able to maybe free up some funds to be able to account for the ask moving forward in the years to come in this particular budget line item. But the overall budget to implement this in all of our schools will be $2.5 million. Here on this slide just kind of gives a breakdown of our plan for rolling out restorative justice across our school districts. As I said before, we've started the program in several of our schools this year. Next year, we will be expanding to more schools. However, these schools already have FTEs in place that we can convert to restorative justice coordinators, so we're not asking for additional funds to be able to roll it out to those additional 6 to 8 schools that we're looking to bring on board. With that being said, next year we will have 25% of our schools will have restorative justice coordinators in them, and then we'll be able to, like I said, continue to look at our implementation moving forward once we engage in the Blueprint 2030 work. At this time, I would like to bring up Sarah Eblin, our and Reginald Berry, our senior restorative justice coordinators, to really break down the 5-year implementation plan of what it would look like to roll out restorative justice across our school district.
All right, good evening, board and KCPS community. It's nice to see y'all face to face this time. Last time we were here, we were just introducing RJ to you all and the impact it had on our community at Southeast High School and the impact that it could potentially have for the rest of our district. So we did some extensive research and thinking about like how could we roll out this plan, and we came up with this looking at certain. Looking at models at the Oakland Unified School District that have done extensive work in RJ practices, and our Denver public schools as well. So we are proud to be here to show how we could roll this out in Fidelity. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to allow my partner, Sarah Eblin, take the stage. Thank you.
Good evening. I share an office with Reginald Berry. This is the first time I've ever seen him clean anything, so we're off to a good start. So, like Barry said, we did base this off of the models that we're very fond of ourselves who have done this work for the past 5 to 15 years. These step 1 and step 2, good news, we've already done it. And so our student ambassadors and our restorative justice team worked very closely with all of the departments that were involved in code of conduct research and have been staying in contact with Darren Washington as he moves this forward. We also work very closely with the Center for Conflict Resolution. We already have a contract with them. They provide Discipline That Restores training and have just added 2 really awesome trainings to their repertoire. That would be Applied Restorative Practices and Facilitated Dialogue. And right now, 17 of our schools have taken the Discipline That Restores training. All right, we want to start this work by doing school readiness surveys. We want to make sure we tailor this to schools. Every school is different, and restorative justice is not a program, it's a paradigm shift, so it will look different in every school. Step 4 is our restorative justice coordinator residency program that's broken down on the next slide. All right, so our residency program is what makes us stand out from the districts we mentioned earlier. This is a grow your own residency program. We believe the best people to do this work are people who have already shown loyalty to the district through years of service and by showing that they have a restorative mindset through positive relationships with staff, family, and students. We recruit these residents with their buildings, and we bring them on first by putting them through mediation training with the Center for Conflict Resolution. Doing that, they actually obtain their certification for mediation in the state of Missouri. We have them do 120 hours of observation at Southeast High School. We want to make sure we're doing this work with fidelity. So we want them to both be confident in their skills that they learned in training and spend time with us and see how we're doing it in a school that has proven results. And there is a curriculum component. When they're residents, they do 4 professional developments. They have 15 research response entries, and they create an implementation plan with our staff to make sure that every school is confident when they take it on their own. As graduates, they move into their school buildings. They continue to do this work. We provide 10 weeks of coaching and feedback so that they are not just left alone in their building right away, and they continue to be part of our professional development and the Kansas City Restorative Network. This is truly what makes us stand out from other models, because we make sure that we are keeping people in-house and we are not recruiting people who don't understand the unique needs of our district. Oh, also, this is Pamela Young and Brandon Carr. They are the first graduates of this program. We have 2 new residents from Thaxton and Success at Anderson who have started their programming, so this is our second cohort. All right, we would have said it earlier, but step 5 is okay. This work needs to be for students by students. We are so proud of our Restorative Justice Student Ambassador program. They attend the same mediation training as residents, and they also get a certificate in mediation, which is a skill they can use later in life and market themselves with. We will have yearly conferences. They will attend leadership training at the Tucker Leadership Lab. And they are truly the facilitators of this work. They do student mediations, they do community accountability boards, and we cannot speak highly enough. And they're 30 feet in the air on ropes here, so if that tells you anything about their strength. Step 6, we want to provide strong, ongoing professional development. I already mentioned CCR and the strengths they have in this community, and they've been serving for 15 years. But we also want to make sure that as a staff, we provide senior restorative justice coordinator training based on the unique needs of every school, which means it'll be tailored training. In the same capacity, their coordinators in the building will have a restorative justice library in the school. They will provide professional development on Wednesdays when the school usually does to check in, and they'll provide coaching and mentoring to teachers to make sure that it is done to fidelity of the practice and theory. All right, last but not least, we truly believe this work is felt, but we also know the importance of data. And so we look at quantitative and qualitative data. One particular one I want to point out to you is student recidivism. For a lack of non-criminal justice language, we define this as students who have 5 or more discipline reports. At Southeast High School, we were able to decrease our recidivism rates by 56% over 2 years. So this is something unique we're not tracking right now as a district that our department will take on tracking. We also look at qualitative research. Most importantly, we have a relationship with UMKC researchers. They've already started researching how Southeast has done this work, and they will continue to follow this journey. So as a district, we have an institutional memory of how this was done that we can share with other districts as they start to adopt what we do. You can see the student impact numbers as we grow. We did start at Southeast High School with 550 students, thanks to Jessica Bassett giving us the green light 3.5 years ago. And by the end, we will be serving our full district in just 4 short years, but doing it with fidelity and consistency district-wide. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation. I'm sorry, go ahead. We've got Dr. Jones, and I know Mr. Hogan and Mr. Wasserstrom, and then Mr. Abarca. So you all will help me keep track of that.
Yes, thank you, and I'll definitely limit my questions. So thank you for this presentation. I can see all the work that's been done over this year, so I really appreciate that, and it's very encouraging. And so I just got to pick, a couple of questions I have, so we talk about, one of the things you mentioned is that sometimes staff can feel unsupported when you enact these types of suspension bans. And so I wonder, though, when we look at that category, which I'm glad you're focused on, that category of people who they've been at a bunch of level 1 and 2s and that can cause them to be suspended. That is a very concerning category. And I'm wondering, how do you as administrators decide when, okay, one of the problems, some children might be dealing with trauma at home that causes them to be disruptive, which we know is not everyone.
Yes.
But then at what point do you decide, well, maybe there's something wrong with the way that a teacher is either managing the classroom, or maybe their teaching methods are not aligned with the way that students are. And that's not necessarily social emotional learning.
Yes.
It's more pure teaching strategy and behavior management.
Yes, so this is definitely, when we talked about the trauma teams that we have at each individual team, we call them trauma teams because of the overall work that we're doing at the district. But what that is, they look at every suspension that goes on in a school building. So monthly, we look at the data and we be able to break down the data to kind of say, is this a teacher problem? Do we have individual teachers that are referring a lot of students? Do we need to push in to provide additional supports? Do we need to go in and observe to find out what's going on? Do we need to provide different supports and structures? So we're able to cater our support systems based on the data for that particular school. One of the things that we also noted in our work is the being able to break down, I don't know, and Dr. Collier actually brought it up when we presented earlier, there was areas like the assault on a teacher or assault on a staff members, to be able to break down the code of conduct and to be able to say, what is assault? You know, is it a situation that a student is upset and they just kind of rush out of the classroom and brush up against a teacher? Is that really assault? Being able to break those information, breaking down the code of conduct to find out what does those codes mean and how they should be used effectively. But I can tell you right now that we have been doing these trainings on the discipline that's restores training that we've had, and we have over almost half of our school district that has completed these trainings. The teachers are having these conversations themselves. The school teams are having these conversations. They're able to roll back the onion and kind of look at what are some different things that we need to do. I recall in my conversations working with Lincoln Middle, for example, when they looked at their data, they identified, we seem to suspend African American females at a higher rate than anybody else in the school district. Why is that? And so we begin to target our approach to working on how do we address how we're looking at the adultification of African American female students and begin that work. So we're being very intentional about how do we balance the work of working with being culturally responsive as well as trauma within the school district.
Let me chime in on that because I think there's another phase to this. When you asked that question, Dr. Jones, it triggered my days as a high school principal, and I remember the number of kids that we had referred to CEP back. That was the Campus Education Partners, and was trying to figure out why we have so many kids that are being referred out of the school, and then why do we have such a high disciplinary infraction rate. And at that time, we had two assistant principals, and we also had a magnet coordinator. So you had 3 different people, right? This is how schools are typically set up, that are all handling discipline, even as an administrator. So we talk about the teacher level, but when different kids are going to different administrators, it makes it a lot harder to then be able to identify, are there common threads amongst teachers? So one of the things we did was we just said we're going to have one person with a secretary handle discipline for the whole school. And then what happened then was in our handbook, we kind of redesigned how we would do discipline. I have to go upstairs and look at it, but it was a different process. And then because we were able to track specifically who the high flyer teachers were, that gave us an opportunity to have some data to go in and see, is it a disconnect with the teacher and the student? Is it really the student? How do we then provide support? And we saw significant decreases in the amount of students that were being referred to CEP, and our suspension rates went down, but we were able to control it because we had it all going into one area. And so, we had the flexibility to do that in part because we were a decentralized school system, so I get to determine, how I want to do my personnel and all of that. But, a lot of our schools have multiple APs. It's a model that we could potentially look at, but we also want our APs to focus on being instructional leaders because we know they aspire to move up. But the individuals that I hired weren't looking to move into being a principal or anything like that. So, right personnel. But it's 2 layers. You have the teacher aspect of it, but we also have to look at our administrators and then, who triggers moving kids out, because ultimately as administrators, we are the ones that make the final decision on who gets suspended. So that just made me think about it's twofold in terms of how we have to look at this work.
Yes, and that's why our focus is on both working with teachers as well as working with administrators on proper training on the implementation of this work.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And then the second question I had was, first of all, I'm heavily in support. If we have it, spend it for whatever you're asking for these councils. I want to say that. I also am thinking about, so before we in the interim, so before that, hopefully we can find those funds to do that. I'm praying that we can. But in the interim, when we think about the people that are already in the schools right now, so thinking about the behavioral interventionists, the clinicians, the counselors, city year, all the other kind of supports that we have, has there been some thought? I know you have, but what thought has there gone into? Is there some way to better utilize those folks in a way that would be supportive of, whatever the teachers are saying they need to feel more supported?
Exactly. Yes. And so that's the information that I gave you guys in my last presentation about how we realigned our supports for schools to make sure that we were being proactive versus reactive. And, the model that was being used in our school districts with our trauma sensitive clinicians, where they were a tier 3 intervention, where they were waiting for referrals. And now we use a collective impact data model where we are tracking student discipline, academics, and student attendance to kind of, and then utilizing a universal screener to kind of identify what areas that we need to kind of push in to be able to support teachers. Our clinicians actually go in to teachers' classrooms, do observations, provide coaching and support, job embedded coaching. They lead the trauma teams in every school and look at data every month. We have staffing every month with our clinicians, and they are charged with making sure they're driving down the data in every building. So we have been intentional about how we utilize those staff members differently.
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, thanks. So I love this stuff. Yeah, I love Dr. Jones. She did steal a question of mine. Dr. Collier, she also stole a question of mine. I love you too, but now I'm going to stop.
Oh, I get the last love.
But yeah, well, But this is awesome. Like, right? I was hooked the minute I went into Southeast and saw this in practice, right? And talked to the kids and about it, because that's ultimately what I was focused on: is how are the kids how receptive are they to it, and have they bought in, and do they really believe it's a way in which they can go deal with some of the challenges that they have with their peers during the day. But I want to see the suspensions go across K-12. I think I've made that clear. I know we've got to maybe do this first, but I think this is something we should implement across all grade levels. I had a little hard time tracking the dollars, though, and the numbers, so I want to kind of step back to that.
Okay.
And I guess it's it's a combination of slides 40 and 41, I think, and maybe even 42. So if I look at sort of the upcoming school year, which would be 21, 22, and the other 4 years, how many resources are we planning to add each one of those years?
Okay, are you talking about the restorative justice coordinators?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so in order for you to really track the dollars, this slide here kind of breaks down the actual schools that you will be adding positions for. That's how the money is calculated.
So every school without an asterisk is adding positions? Is that a true statement?
Every school from 22 through 25 is adding positions.
Okay. Do we know how many?
Yes, 1 per school. One additional FTE per school.
Okay, so starting at 21, 22.
21, 22, those schools currently have an FTE that will be converted to a restorative justice coordinator, which would not add an additional FTE to the school district. The money is coming from is rolling those positions over that are currently grant funded for next school year that we will no longer have grant funds for. Okay. So that's the funds that we're requesting for budgetary for next year, or just rolling over those funds for those positions that are currently in our school district that are grant funding. No additional FTEs are added next year, just keeping the same FTEs that we currently have.
Pay for them, right?
Yes, we still have to pay for it.
Okay, so if I look at that, so you've got, 6 positions essentially in 21, 22.
Plus the 4 that we are funding, so it's a total of 10.
Okay, so 10.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost for those 10 resources is $776?
Correct.
Okay.
with benefits and all the things that kind of go along with the rolling out the program.
Okay, and so then if I look at 22, 23, then is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus an additional 4?
Correct. Plus an addition, yeah. Plus, you got to add 10. So you're adding all the positions. You just need to add up every line item, and you keep adding all the positions until you get to 2025, which will be a total of potentially 35 restorative justice coordinators across the school district.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a super important work, and I think we got to find a way to fund it. I would also challenge the district to get creative about how we fund it. Additional grant money, et cetera. I mean, you saw kind of where we are with that $18 million in tax revenue that we're not going to see for however many years. And so I want us to do this work. I just think we need to get really creative about how we fund it, because it's we've got two needs, right? We've got the fiscal viability of the district on top of the needs of the kids. And so we've just got to find a way to sort of bring those two together. Thank you, though. This is awesome.
Thank you.
I think, Mr. Wasserstrom, you're next.
What community partner are you working with to get the 2.5 million?
Well, we're working with everybody that's possible. So I have been meeting with all of the funders that we've worked with in the past and having some conversations. I can tell you now, one of the funders that we are working with that's currently been funding this work is Kaufman. And so we are in continuing conversations. They haven't given me a no, so I'm taking it as a slow yes. So I will continue to advocate and have conversations until I get to a yes.
Well, there's not too many funders at that level.
Okay.
Mr. Abarca?
Yeah, so first off, let me acknowledge your team is clearly very passionate about this work. It is tremendously amazing to see passionate individuals talking about this really in-depth, very important work. So kudos to the both of you, to Dr. Bedell. I mean, it is just incredible to hear this. I've got a list of questions, but I'll try and streamline it. Our SROs, how do they fit into this, right? Because they're going to interact to some degree, at least in our high schools. Are those folks CIT trained automatically? How do they fit into this?
We have a comprehensive approach. My amazing security team did a presentation to the number ones and number twos in the district. Actually, last week about the work that we're doing. All of our SROs have been mental health first aid trained. Over spring break, they will be doing the CIT training. They all have engaged in the same trainings that I have the school teams going in. So my security team is absolutely amazing with this work and making sure that they are aligned with the work that we're doing in the school district. And so I believe that once we are able to implement the different models that we have, we're going to be a cutting edge school district and doing things that no one around the country is doing as it relates to the deep work that we're doing in this area, because we are looking at making sure every stakeholder has the tools necessary to meet the social and emotional needs of kids in this school district.
I guess my second question is, how do we keep this amazing staff and then all of the staff that you educate? Because I think that's a legitimate concern, is as you become the training ground for everyone, people are going to want to come and steal your employees. So how do we maintain that team together? That's
Ms. Wolfsey?
And of course, you just asked me, and it went woof out of my head. No, I know what it was. I think they've said everything. I see this as being one of our key differentiators. Truly, when we are trying to explain to not only new teachers we're trying to bring in, but mostly new parents and new students. As this rolls out, when I see 2024, 25 school year, I think, like you just said, we might be, at least within the region, if not in the country, one of the more well-established restorative programs. And I would like us to, that's what we are known for. And that people seek us out because they make a decision, wow, I'm looking at this and this, but, KCPS, they've been doing 5 years of restorative justice. That's what I think we could be.
That's my goal, for us to be a model trauma-informed school district.
Ms. Cortez?
I'll be very brief. First of all, I just want to thank you and Dr. Bedell and the team for hearing deeply the comments that were made by this board in September, because I think sometimes, you know, we get excited about things and we kind of all go back to what we do, and that's business as usual. And this really is an incredible progression away from business as usual. So I really want to acknowledge that and recognize that this is not the beginning, but we're still in that early stage of a process that once we commit to, we have to see through. Yeah. I mean, I think that's critical, because to get halfway in this process will be detrimental for every participant in the educational system, right? It won't just be damaging to our kids, it'll be damaging to the adults in the system as well. So I think if we're going to create this opportunity, we really have to be committed to seeing it through. So thank you.
If I can, I'd like to respond to that, because you couldn't have said it any better. That was the conversation that we had as we went through these presentations earlier. You know, we talk a lot about Blueprint 2030, and we talk about, you know, the tough decisions that we will have to make. And I think the more that we're engaging the community, the more comfortable I'm becoming, and really just realizing the fact that all of this is doable. It's not doable under our current configuration of our system, and with the inefficiencies and with the resources being spread so thin. And so, is it very doable, and can it be done in a very sustainable way? Yes. Can something like this be utilized as a recruitment tool? Absolutely. But it has to be done the right way, and we have to have sustainable resources to do so. And in order to have sustainable resources, that's where very tough decisions are going to have to be made to ensure that we are able to do these type of programs and have it in every single one of our schools. I agree. We should have our schools staffed with all of the support. I think not only with the social and emotional aspect of what we're doing for kids, but I don't want ancillary teachers or special teachers having to go to 2 to 3 schools in order to fulfill their contracts, because we don't have enough students or we don't have enough sections being offered at school. So it's refreshing to think about the possibilities of where all of this could ultimately lead us to. But in order to get there, you know, there's going to be some pain in order to get there. That's the only way I can say it.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. I think you were reflecting some of my own feelings about it. I think it's extraordinary the way you've laid out this plan. And I think that it's visionary and very bold. And then we have to decide as a school board and as a public community about how people will step forward and advocate for adequate public resources for public schools. We have a pie, and each year people are taking away a larger slice of the pie. So we have less money, and I appreciate what you had to say, Dr. Bedell, because I think that students need this, and it's important. I do have just a couple of quick questions. Look at the the chart you had where it shows the various infraction, pointed out what represents level 1 and 2. Was yes. So where you have so many, what's going on in our K1 grades, like, and maybe you don't need to answer tonight because that may be a long discussion, but what is really happening here? Because at the later grades, you see those numbers drop. So what's occurring with kindergarten children and our first graders, and what's happening with the teachers and maybe the school staffs and their ability to kind of intervene in this?
Yes, so this is a major concern across across the country, where they're seeing K-1 students across the country increase in discipline concerns. All of our support schools, our alternative schools, as well as our residential placement centers have been all full in this area of K-1. So this has been a major issue of concern the last couple of years. We've seen an increase in behaviors in this particular area, and it really stems to the level of increased trauma that we're seeing that our students are being faced with. So we are doing intensive work in this particular area, and we have been over the last couple years to really address these concerns. But this is K-1 is the major area that we're seeing an increase in behavior infractions.
So I guess my follow-up with that is, have you identified if there's particular schools that are having much higher rates than others?
Yes.
And what kinds of very intentional work are you able to do within those school settings?
Yes, so we have identified those particular schools, and we've identified partners to kind of partner with us in that and really push into those schools to provide additional levels of support. So we have, like Maddie Road Center, we've identified those schools that focus in a lot in those particular areas in which they serve, to be able to have therapists within those particular schools, to be able to work with those students and families inside the school building instead of referring them out inside the school buildings. We've worked to develop partnerships with Swot Health Center to go into a couple of those schools that we're seeing those high levels of discipline as well. So we have targeted interventions to work with those individual schools, because what we're seeing is when we refer students out, the parents are working, they're not getting the resources that's necessary, they're not following up with their particular treatment. So we're now creating a model where we have our partners pushing into our school district versus referring students out.
Are there any other additional questions here? So, Dr. Bedell, I think this is you've laid out some recommendations and some proposals, and I'm assuming that what you'll be looking for is feedback, follow-up feedback from the school board, and then there'll be some discussion in our budgeting process, correct? That's what will happen.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of you for coming tonight and staying with us.
Thank you. And I did have one question. I can't remember your name. You made a comment, Sarah.
Sarah Eblin.
Okay, you made a comment on restorative justice, and you said, I wrote it down, but I don't think I got it right. It's not an initiative; it is a paradigm change. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Paradigm shift. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you all. So we're ready for our final presentation to the board and the community tonight, and it is our board policy 1.2.1 update on our graduation and our college career readiness presentation as it pertains to hitting those targets with graduation rates. We will now pass it over to Dr. Jermaine Wilson, who will then move it with several staff members, or with Dr. Christy Harrison, and then our building principals, who will present to you just as they did last year on progress on their respective campuses in this area.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Bedell, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I'm excited to be in front of you in person again and not seeing you on the computer. Tonight we'll be sharing with you an update on board policy 1.2.1 regarding graduation as one of the critical components for our district's college and career readiness goals. As Dr. Bedell said, you'll be hearing from a team of individuals that'll talk to you around the work that we've been engaged in to continuously improve graduation rates at our district high schools. There are two components that comprise our methodology to increase graduation rates in our district high schools, one being project graduation, and the other being our graduation professional learning communities, or graduation PLC as they are affectionately called. The leadership team for these programs are interdepartmental in nature, spanning the Division of Student Support to the Office of Educational Innovation, the Division of Research Assessment and Accountability, and the Department of School Leadership. The planning and goals are driven by myself, Dr. Christy Harrison, Major Stevie Brooks, and Mr. Rick Bishop as the leadership team. So I'm going to give you just a background of where we started. In 2018-2019, when our team took the lead of the Project Graduation Initiative within the district, one of the things that we really recognized was we needed to focus on how we worked with our school site teams to really understand foundational elements of calculating the graduation rate for DESE. What we did was we started looking at our four-year cohorts of students on our campuses. We looked at the data tracking system that we had in place for those students, and then we allowed the sites to really engage in individual site planning depending on where they were and what the individual needs were at their campus. In 2019-2020, we expanded. We decided that we needed to really create more wraparound supports for our school teams, and we did that by way of the Graduation PLC. The Graduation PLC is a process to support our comprehensive site teams, those teams consisting of our district principals, vice principals, counselors, registrars, our dropout and attendance specialists, as well as our graduation lab coaches. The goal was to provide more collaboration as a network of leaders to really embrace best practices of collaboration and collective responsibility as we continuously improve. You'll now hear from Dr. Christy Harrison, who will talk to us about the current work that we've been engaged in with our sites this current year. You'll look at some of the ways that we've expanded the work of the Graduation PLC on our campuses and picked up some innovative practices as well. And then following her, you will hear from our high school principals that will share information about their site data trends, their goals for this school year, and the efforts that they've been engaged in to really help our students to be successful. One caveat I would like to say is some of the data points that they'll be using are the recent data points that they presented to our cabinet at our February 17th meeting. And so as all things, as we are traversing towards the end of the third quarter, they are engaged in initiatives that are helping to improve those numbers, and things are shifting, and they've really engaged in some innovative practices. So I will now bring to you Dr. Christy Harrison. Let me clean the mic.
Good evening. As we looked, we saw where we've been, and I will tell you a little bit about where we are this year. We've been focusing on really increasing the measures of progress for all four cohorts. As we presented to you over the last couple of years, we really focused just on our senior cohorts and even on our freshmen. This year we've expanded so that we are really looking across the system as students when they enter high school all the way through completion of high school. So we have an integrated approach with interventions that we're providing, and all of our departments together are able to support those efforts. The other piece that we've added this year is establishing a range of programs with the interventions that the district already has in place. So we have our Missouri options, our middle college, our ECA, these types of programs, and increasing the communication within these departments as all of these programs come together to sit in the Graduation PLC. The collaboration across them has really been a big piece of this. We've also focused on strategically providing professional development that is helping to lead right where we need to go. And our data teams, of course, work within our schools to keep our data relevant and up to date, and so our principals know in real time where they're at. So at this time, I'm going to call up our principals. We're going to start with Mr. Hinojosa from East High School, and he will share his data with you.
Hello, everyone. Before we get started, I want to say a couple of things. I have a little cough. It's nothing serious, okay? And that's why I brought my water up here. And I just want to make sure that it's just clear that it's all good, okay? And I have Mr. Madry follow me, so we're going to be fine. The first thing I want to do is say, Dr. Bedell, Board President Manser, and everyone else, thank you for allowing us an opportunity to share tonight. It's great to see everyone here. It's great to see my fellow coworkers, everyone here, just in person. So it's a great time today. I want to start off with the first slide, and if you notice the first slide, we have a gradual increase in our graduation rate. It's steadily gone up, and our goal is currently 75%. If we look at our graduation rate as if we graduate today, okay, we're looking around 65. Okay, so we still have some things we got to do, and we are going to project right now, given the circumstances that we're working with, I believe we're going to get a minimum of 70% by the end of June. And that's what I'm projecting right now. I do feel it's going to be a little higher, but I want to project on the lower side. So that's something that we're looking forward to here, is getting those numbers up. I want to make sure that I give credit to our counseling team, Mr. Ahmed, our dropout specialist, Major Brooks and his team, and our admin team, our teachers. What we've done with our graduation list here is we've identified who are our Tier 3 students and our inactive students. And we've really targeted those students, and we went line by line trying to identify where they are. We would take the list, share them with the students. Hey, do you know where this student is? Those inactive students they could have left the state, left the country, went to another school, and we didn't pick them up. Those inactive lists are something that we are really trying to hammer out and identify. We also have the numbers and the luxury to have our middle college and our Missouri options. And those numbers have really helped us. Our Missouri option students, we have 7 of those. Out of those 7, 3 of them have gone MIA. We're still trying to find them. They started the program and have gone out. We have 1 that graduated. We have 2 that need to take a couple of tests and they're done. And then we have 1 that's going to graduate in December. And so we're excited for those numbers for the Missouri options. For our middle college program, being a school as large as we are, we have a larger number for middle college. Right now we have 49 enrolled in middle college. 12 have already graduated. We have 16 that's anticipated that are on track to graduate in June. We have 14 that's on track to graduate July 22nd. So we're anticipating out of that 49, 42 to graduate. 7 of them will roll over. They're a little farther behind, and they'll graduate next year. The 7 that we have a difference with. We currently have 59 inactive students. Out of those 59, through that process that I mentioned with you, going line by line, student by student, we were able to recover 7. When I say recover, that means we were able to find out they were at another school or they had moved out of the country, so we can eliminate from that denominator. If we can lower that denominator, our graduation goes up. So that's what we're trying to really hammer with the inactive list. We meet every week with our attendance committee to address our inactive list. Previously, before these last 2 months, we would alternate that with our missing students, meaning kids that are not showing up, and we go over those lists and contact them and split those up with our committee. But in the last month and a half, we've really targeted our inactive list for seniors just to make sure we can give that extra boost. And we were able to find some students, and some students are just telling us, I don't want to go. So we're trying to convince them and have people, other teachers, other students talk to them. An interesting data point that I do want to share with you, out of the 287 on our cohort list for this year, 184 started with us day 1. Okay? 287 is on our cohort, meaning they enrolled at East. 184 started with us. Out of those 184 that's on our cohort list, 141 are considered active still. Out of those 141 that are still active, 112 of them are on pace to graduate. That's a 79% rate. So the way we look at that, the way we interpret that data, if we have established a program at East, that if we can get them to stay at East for 4 years, we can get them graduated. This mobility rate of 36% would affect any building, and especially a building of our size. So we're trying to figure out a way, how can we talk to our students, talk to our families to allow them to stay 4 years and not bounce from school to school. We can go to the next slide, please. This is a breakdown of our academic tiers. We have all 4 cohorts. We have Tier 3, Tier 2, Tier 1. Our counselors have done a great job identifying based on how many credits they are. If they're on track, they've earned all their credits, if they're behind a few credits, or they're behind a lot of credits. That's basically the tier system that we use. And if you look at those numbers right now, the one number that pops out is that sophomore, freshman, and 40%. So when we dig deeper, and we dug deeper into those numbers, we realized that that group had a difficult year last year. Not only did they have a rough first semester, and we had some new teachers, newer teachers that were had a high F rate proficiency there, or failure rate. And so we were trying to address those after the first semester was over. Then this pandemic hit, and then some of those students didn't really feel like finishing the year out completely. So right now what we're doing is our sophomore teachers have embraced those students, and we broke them up into smaller groups, and they're targeting them for attendance and grades, and so we're trying to recover some of those things. Some of the ideas that we were able to share within our own with our peers, we are trying to find a way to use our AutoCware to make up credits, and looking at their first semester, second semester, and trying to get those credits back up for those sophomores specifically. My fear is that we're going to let them fall through the cracks. By the time they're seniors, we're going to lose them. So something that I had visited with Dr. Wilson 3 years ago, after we went through this first round of data, I asked each of our VPs to make sure that they look at their cohort they've been assigned to. They are looping with their group. So Mr. Richardson right now is the senior vice principal, and he's been with them since they were freshmen. So he's been monitoring that group, and we've been trying to find out where they're at. We're down to 59 out of almost 300 students. 59 are inactive, and we thought that number was going to be bigger, but he's done a great job monitoring and keeping track of what we're doing with those students. I just lost my place here. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're also using City Year to assist with targeting students and using them for this purpose to increase or decrease the Tier 3 numbers, and helping us with attendance calls and academic calls, and even mentoring with our students. During advisory, each teacher has their own pathway, and we've looped those teachers to make sure that they have those same students for 4 years. And so they're the pipeline for communication between school and home. And during parent-teacher conferences, everything runs through our advisories. So we're really hoping that this year, and this is the first year where our teachers are really bought into the advisory, and so we're hoping that this piece can help us with the attendance and the academic piece, and tying in their pathway to increase engagement with the school. Our freshmen are going to be returning soon. We have plans of trying to celebrate with them, and our new Americans are returning Monday. So, and our ELL students and high minute sped. So we're excited for the start of the year to kick off, and I appreciate your support in this initiative. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mr. Madry after I clean this real quick. Hey, wait till I'm going the whole way. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, Dr. Bedell, Ms. Manser, the esteemed board, cabinet, and my esteemed colleagues in the back. I'm Anthony Madram, the principal at Central High School. You can go to the next slide, please. As you can see, our graduation rate in 2017 was at approximately 58.7, In 2018-19 school year, that graduation rate dropped. That was the year that Stevie Brooks, or Major Stevie Brooks, was hired into the position he's in now, addressing the dropouts from the level at the district level. And so as we looked at the data, we started realizing why the cohorts weren't growing at the rate they should be growing. As you can see, in 2019-20, our graduation rate went up to 61.6%. And then in 2020-21, our graduation rate, we're expecting to be closer to 64.6. Our goal is approximately 70%. Our goal is 70%, but we're looking at 64.6. That's what we're pretty sure we're going to come out with at least. Next slide, please. The reason I say that, we know we have a lot of students working. If you look at the top line, you have the seniors, the 12th grade students that are working. Many of our students are working. One of the things I did go out and do, we went out and found an employment specialist. Students want to work, so we found work for them that will not interfere with school. Also, Dr. Bedell and Dr. Shepard worked with the principals to establish a night school program. That night school program is going to pay dividends. Part of the reason it's going to pay dividends, most people set their hours like 4 to 6, 6 to 8. My teachers have set it up RSVP. You get to come to school whenever you say you need help. So we have teachers that will work up till 11 o'clock. I have one teacher said, well, if they call me after that, I'll work afterwards. But we're trying to get students to understand we're not going to be the reason you don't graduate. If you don't graduate, if you don't get it together, it won't be our fault. We will provide every opportunity for you. So as it stands right now, we have 35% of our students that are seniors and that are in Tier 1 that are ready to graduate. If you add the Tier 2 and Tier 1 students together, you're looking at 60-some-odd%. That is really what we're looking at for graduation. Now, we already have students that have completed that are in the category of Tier 3. Those are students that are in Missouri Options and the middle college programs, and they've already completed. They just happen to sit in Tier 3 because that is how we designated them. But we do feel very, very confident that our seniors will do what they need to do. This is almost like a movie, the way we're coming back to school. We have enough time to make sure our students are prepared and ready to cross the stage and complete the number of classes they need to complete. One of the things that we've done, Dr. Shepard and I met on yesterday, we are hiring another grad lab coach. Our grad lab coach is able to complete, it seems to be 6 to 7 classes a week with students. We are completing classes at a very fast rate, and our students are very excited about it. The grad lab coach is Lori Peters, and she works directly with Gwendolyn Litzy, the vice principal of communities, and the counselors. That grad lab coach is more like a counselor because she knows exactly what credits every student needs. She's making sure that you're not taking English twice, that you're taking the appropriate credits and you're making sure that you maximize your efforts in crossing the stage. As we start looking at our junior class, we're looking at 47% of our students are in the Tier 1. And as we get back into school, that grad lab coach that we're hiring will be coming in and working directly with those students to do credit attainment, number one. And then number two, work with those teachers where those students have fallen off. Say it's objective number 1 or it's a certain lesson. That second grad lab coach will be working with that teacher to make sure those students attain those credits. And as we go on down the list, you see our sophomore class is at 44% with success. But then the thing that I think I'm most proud of is that our freshman class is at 65%. And that is an effort that Dr. Wilson he leaned on us a little bit to say, hey, you all need to pay really close attention to your freshman class. Part of that goes to the fact that Dr. Woodley's team has provided Jeff Dayton, who is our clinician. We're doing more home visits than you can ever imagine, and he and Vice Principal Robbins are making sure that we knock down all roadblocks as it pertains to social emotional issues like rent, food, and utilities. So we're making sure all those things are taken care of. We have attendance meetings weekly. Those attendance meetings are very useful because we're able to see exactly what's going on with those meetings. We're able to provide school supplies. And then lastly, I'd like to say that bi-weekly check-in with those seniors. Those seniors have a bi-weekly check-in, and our senior class sponsors, Kim Hester and Tamia Morgan, they're working with those seniors diligently, and we should meet our mark very easily. We do have a situation where we're dealing with inactive students. When we started the school year off, we had more than 70 students that would be considered inactive. That would be part of the issue with graduation or graduation numbers being low. Major Brooks and his team, along with Jamil Snowden, who's assigned to our school, Jamil Snowden has gotten our numbers down under 20. So those numbers have dropped considerably, and all of that goes to a comprehensive effort because he will present those students to us. We look at it as a unit, and then as we look at it as a unit, we start going out looking for those kids. And as we look for those kids, it's not an individual effort. It's an effort that we do it as a team. Part of what we're doing is that we've assigned homerooms to every teacher. Every teacher has at least 17 students that they are responsible for that are their babies. So the baseball coach, he has all his kids. You are the parent for that kid. And I want to call it a Texas term, but it's not. Locus parentis. You are the parent when that parent is not there, and we make sure that those homeroom teachers are addressing those students' needs. And then lastly, as those ninth graders come back next week, we are very, very excited. Like I say, this is like a movie because they're coming back in the fourth quarter. They're coming back when it's time to really score and win. So the excitement is there. We're ordering different things for them. We got wristbands coming. We're getting shirts for those students that have been doing everything they're supposed to do. But we're trying to do some things to make them excited about getting back into the educational model. And then when April 6th hit, we're ready to run. We're ready to run full speed. So we're very excited. Any questions? Yes, sir.
In your experience, what problems and what help has mocap and virtual courses played in helping kids that are behind a little bit get across the graduation line?
Two things. So we have a graduation coach already on campus, but Dr. Harrison's team over at KCVA, they are working diligently with us to make sure that students have what they need. So we actually have meetings with them regularly to make sure students get the actual courses they need. When they're not successful, then they need to come back home. And then we make sure that we give them the appropriate attention. Students that most people would have given up on are now being successful in that grad lab. Any other questions?
I think my question, and it's probably the case for a lot of these schools, for East High as well, and Southeast and Northeast, to what extent can we catalog what kinds of conditions are causing students to fall off? You know, Mr. Madry's spoken about food and rent and other kinds of community struggles, and I'm wondering how do we fully document and understand what those struggles are in this COVID year that have really made it hard for some kids to find motivation or the encouragement or the will to be engaged?
Well, Ms. Manser, I can answer this to a degree. Dr. Woodley has assigned Jeffrey Dayton, our clinician, to us, and Mr. Dayton and Mr. Robbins, they really work hard to make sure that our students get everything they need. One of our mottos is that you won't be able to blame me for not graduating. This is on you. We made sure that we fed over 500 families the week before Thanksgiving. We gave out 260 turkeys and dinners the week of Thanksgiving to all of our students and some of the feeder schools. And then lastly, all of our students received a $50 gift card from Hy-Vee, from our Alumni Association, to make sure that, to show that love. Part of the reason we're still growing and we're still getting students is because there's a love factor there. Our students know we love them, therefore they're gonna come to school. They're gonna do all the things that we ask. But as we have come up with a need, I've turned to Dr. Woodley and her team and said, Dr. Woodley, I need help. And that help has been there. So, and I know it's being documented, and I'm not sure how Dr. Woodley and her team will present it, but it is being documented, the things that we're doing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
And I'd like to introduce my esteemed colleague, Anthony Holland. He will be speaking for Paseo High School.
Good evening. Good evening, Board Chair and Board of Directors, Superintendent's Cabinet, and Superintendent. I am not Dr. Patricia Hayes. I am Anthony Holland Jr., and I'm one of the assistant principals there. I'm standing in on behalf of her because she is under the weather. And it's an honor to be here because I am presenting graduation data on a school that I graduated from 20 years ago this year. So it's kind of full circle. So our data. We are projecting at least a 92% graduation rate this year. Based off the data and all the work that we've done in our school, in making sure that all of our inactive students were found, in making sure that all of our students have all the tools that they need, especially during this pandemic, we are predicting that if graduation was today, we would have at least 92%, but we just got an update today from our data team with Mr. Rick Bishop, and because of the work that we've done since our meeting on February 17th, we believe that that Tier 3 number has gone down, which is going to increase our graduation rate. We know that if we continue the work that we're doing, we will exceed this 93% goal that we've had. As we see that the graduation rate has increased over the last couple of years, and we plan on having an increase in graduation this year and in the years to come. When it comes to our tiers, we have worked extensively, of course, by providing our students with an opportunity to come to our schools during the evening for help. We have staff at Paseo at all times, except for Wednesdays, of course, and we've never turned away a student that needed assistance, whether it was with technology, whether it was with academics. Anybody that is in our building that is available to help has provided help to anybody who was in need, including providing old desks for a parent who wanted to set up a classroom within their home. So as we carefully continue to look at these numbers and look at our students at an individual level, we are finding that as long as we stay connected with them, as long as they are staying in contact online, and as long as we continue just to make sure that all their needs are met, then we can accurately predict that we will far exceed our graduation rates. One of the things that we did in the beginning of the school year is that we noticed that there was a lot of issues with students where they were taking care of families and were not able to get on. So what we did, we made sure that we were flexible enough in making sure that if they needed the assistance or they needed to adjust their schedule, we provided them with the Odyssey Wear courses, and we also provided them with afternoon and evening opportunities for them to get exactly what they needed and made those adjustments. And because of that, we turned Tier 3 students into Tier 1, and we can guarantee that they will graduate this spring. And thank you. I believe in keeping it short, so. Thank I don't want to tear nothing up with y'all. Ms. Bassett, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Dr. Riddell, Board Chair, board members, cabinet, and the Kansas City community. I'm very excited about presenting today. This is actually my 4th year as principal of Southeast, so I've had an opportunity to kind of see the progress that we've made, and it's even especially exciting to hear from Sarah and Reggie, that team. I just wanted to throw this in there. When you talk about making hard decisions, when we adopted this pilot program of restorative justice, it meant that I had to let go of 2 amazing teachers because they were so passionate about it. And it was a really hard decision because, Sarah was working in English 9 and she was killing it. But we knew that we had to make this decision to make sure that we kept more of our students in school. And so it is a sacrifice, so I just want to put that out there. But it's definitely worth it, definitely been worth it over the last few years. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about graduation rates now. During my first year, we ended that year with 76% graduation rate. We had about a 5% drop, and as Mr. Madry spoke about earlier, a lot of it had to do with just some of the issues with not having a dropout specialist to really clean up that data. Because one of the things that we would talk about all the time, if they're in this building, we're going to make sure they get out of here on time. And so once we really began to clean up the cohort data, and we did our work within the building, you could see that following year, once 2020, an 11% jump. Because we know if we have our students in the building, we're going to go through every process to get them where they need to be. Our goal this year is 76%, and it's a 3% increase, but we believe that we can meet it. And really, as we sit down and talk, we believe that we can exceed it, but we're definitely going to meet that 76% goal that's been set by the district. One of the things that, I'm ready to move to the next slide. One of the things that I want to talk about is our senior data that we have in this, that top row. It is already moved. So we're looking at the information that was shared in February. I wasn't saying more. Don't move the slide yet. This information was given in February, and already we have movement. We've been very strategic about how we needed to move students, and actually every grade level we've seen movement. So one of the things that we've adopted through the Odyssey Ware is this idea of class pace, and I want to talk about how powerful class pace is. What we found when our students were online, they had some quarters that they were amazing, and then another quarter, all of a sudden they would drop off. It could be either one. Some of it had to do with students who were moving. Some of it had to do with just they had to start working again. And so we didn't want them to lose a quarter of work that they had, where they met the criteria, and then another quarter where they failed and ended up not getting the credit that they needed for the semester. So we went into the data and we began to look at which classes students actually passed and what they needed to get in the second quarter or the opposite quarter so that they could pass for the semester. And already from February to March, that 90, in terms of being on track, we've moved it to 97. We literally have moved 7 kids out of tier 3 and 4 kids out of tier 2. So 4 moved from tier 2 to tier 1, 4 moved from tier 3 to tier 2, and actually 3 moved from tier 3 to tier 1. So, I mean, if you look at class pace, you really will be able to move students really quickly. And we've done it all the way throughout the grade levels. So one of the ways that we've been able to use that also has been through our night school, K-N-I-G-H-T, because we are the Knights. So from 6 to 8, we have our teachers set up to work with our students. So we started out small to make sure that it worked. So we started out with just about 14 students. We're now up to 36 students. And so each week we tend to gain more and more. The way our students are is they have to know that something works and is worth it before they come to it. So you kind of have to get the word out, and then it starts to really pick up. And so we are seeing that increase. The other thing that I wanted to bring out about our strategies is that we also have a group of teachers who said, well, once we get back in person, if we need to come in on Saturday, we're willing to do it. Because when I showed my team this data, especially the freshmen and sophomore teachers, they were like, oh no, this is not the way that we look. And because that was a great concern to us, because we know that if our students are with us, we can make a difference. And the other thing that we also know is that we have so many students who have so many things going on. It's not that they can't get on, but sometimes they get on and it's so much distraction. We're finding even students who are helping their younger siblings get on, and they're not working. So we need to get them back in a space where it is dedicated for school. And so with all of the structures that we have in place in terms of building relationships and in terms of being trauma sensitive and the restorative practices that we have in our building, we know even getting our students back late March and April, we'll be able to really shift that data. And the next time you'll see the tier data, it will look extremely different. But I just want to say, I wanted to make sure I shared that because there's a lot of hope here. I'm telling you, not more than hope. We are confident about it, about where we're going to be. But so the last thing that I wanted to share just about that tier data. So when you were looking at those seniors at tier, they're 43. So that's already reduced. I just told you about the 7 that moved. But when we looked at that, only 13 of those are non-recoverable. This is amazing to only have 13 students that we cannot recover, because usually the cohort is so large that it makes it very difficult. So the work that Major Brooks and his team has done has been really phenomenal in helping us move that graduation rate. And then when we began to break down the 33 students that were left, we started looking at we have 7 in distance learning that's coming back to us, 7 that's going to KCBA, 2 in MOOPS, 2 in Success, 1 in Middle College. And so we've been reaching out and say, hey, okay, what do we need to do to get these last tier 3 students to move so they can, if they can't graduate in May, can they graduate by the end of the summer, and they'll still be a part of this graduation cohort. So we're kind of thinking in terms of that. So we already have 3 students slated to go to Middle College. And so we talked to Annette McDonald about it. And we're making sure they're taking the Odyssey Work courses that they're going to need, so it will accelerate their time in Middle College once they get to start in May. So we have all of these simple strategies to get our students where they need to be. And so we expect to not only meet our goal of 76%, we're hoping to exceed it. We really hope that we can get the number of students to get us to 80, and that would be awesome. So, I'm sorry. Next up is, I'm working. Okay. All right, thank you. Next up is Dr. Irvin, Northeast High School.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Bedell, Superintendent Dr. Bedell, Madam President, and school board members. My name is Wayman Irvin, Dr. Wayman Irvin. I am the principal at Northeast High School. Next slide. So when we look at our graduation rate history, if you go back to 2017, 2018, you see it's at 67%, and it went up 5 percentage points to 72.10%. It did drop to 66.9%. That is my first year at Northeast High School. There was a cultural shift that I had to make at Northeast, for as mindsets, as far with the teachers and also with the students. And our goal for this year is at 70%. I believe that we're going to make the 70% based on the interventions and the remedies that we're doing thus far. Next slide, please. So when you look at our tiers for each grade level, and I want to say that each of our administrators have a grade level. They have a cohort. So Ms. Salak, who was nominated today, she has the senior cohort of 2018. My dean has the freshman cohort. My other vice principal has the 2020, and I have the 2019, the juniors cohort. So our job is to contact our students, to make sure we're doing home visits, make sure we're talking to parents, doing the communication, make sure we're looking at grades, credits, to make sure that they're on the path for graduation. But as you can see, at our tier 3 with our freshmen, there are 83 freshmen, 56% of our students that are behind with the credits. Some of that is due to the pandemic. I don't want to blame the pandemic because the expectation is for our students to get online. We did everything possible starting in September by making sure our students had the technology. We sent our SROs out to the homes to make sure they had technology. our security officers at the buildings was working, our task force that we have that's comprised of our athletic director, our ISS coordinator, our parent liaison, our office staff, our secretaries, and also the admin. We were doing constant home visits. You're talking about more than 3,500 contacts with students, phone calls, talking points. Once again, home visits. I was getting in trouble with my staff by walking into people's homes due to COVID. They open their door, I'm walking in, I'm having a conversation with the parent and also with the student, because I need them to log on. I need them to make sure they understand the expectation for graduation. So when you see those tier 3 numbers, we're working at a fast pace and also a strategic pace to make sure that we decrease those tier 3 numbers to make sure our students are on pace for graduation. And I want you to understand that my first year last year, 80 students in that freshman class were repeaters. They should have been in 10th grade or 11th grade. So we're working to try to catch them up with the credits. So we're doing the Odyssey where we have 2 grad lab coaches for this school year. I wanted to bookend them. I want to put one in the freshman class, one in the senior class, and we're going to work our way towards the middle. We also have our Viking Night Owls. When at the end of the semester, we started our Viking Night Owls the 2 weeks before the semester ended. We had about 160 students to come to our Viking Night Owl. When the new semester started, of course, there was a drop-off. Now we're averaging between 50 and 60 students per week with our Viking Night Owls. We have a 369 policy. Every 3 weeks, we're checking grades. We're checking to see who has a DNF. We're talking to our teachers. Have you contact the parent? Do they know what's going on with their child? We need the documentation. So they have to put in who they talk to, what's the documentation, what is the intervention you're going to put in place in order to help our students. And also our strong participation with Maddie Rhodes, Missouri Options, and Middle College. We have bi-weekly meetings with Missouri Options and Middle College. So we get status. And based on that, we also do home visits with them as well because they still are our students. Even though they're in a different alternative site, we still have to go and visit our students to find out why your progress is not where it needs to be. We also do cultural and climate surveys. Part of changing the climate at the campus, even when we're online, our task force will go into the classes online. We wanted to see if teachers were calling students by name when they came into the class, and they was getting scores based off a criteria, a rubric that we had. And we was able to talk to our teachers. In order to decrease the dropouts, because 23% of our 2018 is dropouts. In order to decrease the dropouts year after year, students got to feel that they are welcome to come to school, whether they're online or they're in person. So part of that culture piece is building that capacity with our teachers of how do you talk to our students? How do you deal with confrontation? How do you deal when a student needs help? So we are striving and making gains in that. We have students who are reaching out to our teachers more. There are students who are more wanting to know what their grades are, taking more accountability of their grades. So that transformation is happening as we moving forward. Because I'm not just looking now at 2018, I got to look at 2021. Because we don't want to have 23% dropouts anymore. We have to start at 9th grade. We have to finish our work with those 80 repeaters from last year to make sure they're back on track. And also look at our seniors this year, the ones who have fell off because of the pandemic. Once again, I'm not using that as an excuse, but we got to get them back on track because we still have the summer to catch them back up. And I have 2 success stories for you. There was a young man, if he's listening, he'll know who I'm talking about. When we was distributing out Chromebooks at the beginning of the school year, I believe in August, this student was a dropout. He was riding in the car with another student as he received his Chromebook. He said, Dr. Irvin, I want to come back to school. How can I do it? I want to graduate. We talked, got his phone number, got him with Missouri Options. He's a graduate today. He has completed. We have students who want to do the work, that want to graduate. My other student is a 2018 cohort, 14 credits behind. She put in the work this school year. The pandemic, the online may have hurt some, but for some students, this has been a godsend for them to be at home in front of a computer and just work, if they was able to do it and just work. She was able to make up 14 credits, and she will be a graduating senior for 2018. So we're going to keep striving. We're going to keep putting in innovative practices, interventions to make sure our students graduate on time, in a timely manner, and also those students that we missed prior years, that they can still come back and graduate. They can still be part of our 5-year and 6-year graduation rate. Okay, thank you. The next is Principal Christian Foster from Lincoln College Prep.
So for the last time this evening, good evening, Dr. Bedell, members of the board, cabinet, and my peers. Thank you for allowing me to present this evening. My name is Christian Foster, principal of Lincoln College Preparatory High School. This is my 4th year as principal. So the current seniors, we all started our freshman year together. So it's really a good accomplishment to see these kids progress and see them walk across the stage in May. Our graduation rate history is presented. As you can see, we've had pretty much consistent graduation rates over the last 3 years. There was a dip last year. I will say that for the students who were with us at Lincoln working virtually, we had 100% of them graduate. I kind of talked to Dr. Wilson about where the discrepancy was with us dropping down to 97.7, and it could be attributed to the ECA program and students being allowed to graduate in June. But for our kiddos, we were at 100%, and I look forward to doing that again this year. We do have, we've implemented several policies over the last few years that have helped students to increase their engagement in school. And starting with 9th grade, we believe if students are engaged, vested, and have something to come to school for, that will help them to be successful. Some of those include 9th graders. In their advisory class, they learn about the Navient system. They're able to track letters of recommendation, scholarship applications, college options, and so they really get the idea of college in their head from day one, 9th grade. We've also developed a course catalog and pathway planners so that students and families can, again, begin in 9th grade, planning out which classes they want to take, and they can be strategic and not have to take courses they're not interested in, but be very intentional with that planning. We have new student and parent orientations. We also have a specific 10th grade parent meeting to discuss our IB diploma and certificate options. Those are very heavily attended, even our virtual world. I think we had upwards of 50 parents participate this year, so that was considered very successful. We are confident in reaching our 100% graduation rate this year, and I do have to brag, we've had 2 kids graduate already. They're 2 of the 4 Division I full scholarship athletes, so they've already started college. Here's our academic tier information. As you can see, our 10th grade group, as with the other schools, our highest percentage of those students are in Tier 3. That is likely due to them finishing their last year in COVID. However, I do want to point out we only have about 20 10th grade students who are on academic probation. So even though they're having some difficulty and are in Tier 3, their GPA is not necessarily below a 2.5. So I think that puts us in a really good position to get those kids back on track and get them ready to graduate. For Tier 3 students, seniors specifically are being monitored by administration and counselors through weekly check-ins, parent meetings, and grade checks. For all of our Tier 3 students, we have intervention time each Wednesday and the use of advisory time 2 times per week, and teachers and students both can initiate those meetings and get additional help. We also will be starting on March 15th, the regular schedule. That's going to increase class time from about 50 minutes to 90 minutes. So that's going to give students and teachers more time together, either virtually or well, it'll be the 22nd for in-person, but more class time in order to work with students, provide individualized instruction, additional interventions, and differentiation. Looking forward, we are going to be reviewing each student to see what is needed specifically with respect to their GPA and help to track them and get them what they need as far as coursework and credits. Students are also enrolled in Odyssey-ware for credit recovery as needed, and we have several staff members that are monitoring their progress. We're starting to plan for summer school to be sure we offer what students need. And we are looking at getting additional staff trained through the IB program so they can support students at all grade levels and get them ready for their advanced coursework junior and senior year. We've also expanded several course offerings and programs based on student interest. Our biomedicine program is one example, and it's very successful. We have increased enrollment, and students are hopefully going to end up with an industry-recognized credential. Speaking to what Dr. Woodley presented on and what Ms. Bassett presented on, we have really been focused on building relationships this year with staff and students. Our number one goal and our focus was we don't want to lose a kid. Keep track of your kids, build those relationships even virtually, and we have been successful in that. As reflected on our TNTP, who we have a partnership with, their survey showed that over 80% of our students indicate that they felt that they could come to a teacher or staff member if they had a concern or were in trouble. And I was really proud of that. So that's something I definitely consider an accomplishment. Our staff has also been trained on equity and restorative justice, part 1 with Dr. Davis, and we did have a 2-day professional development, our whole staff, through the Center for Conflict Resolution. So that will hopefully help our teachers to work with students who've had trauma just from being in COVID when they return to school in a couple of weeks. Additionally, our interventions for everyone in Tier 1, intervention time will continue on Wednesdays. We will have, I apologize, I lost my spot here. Peer tutoring was the other component. We do have a peer tutoring program with our IB students, and even though community service is not a graduation requirement this year, IB students still need to complete those community service and CAS hours. So that is a program we hope to expand when students return to the building. Our probation students and Tier 3 students will also be returning every week as opposed to every other week, which is what all of our other students will be doing when we return to school live. And we're ready for the 9th graders. It's going to be an orientation celebration. I'm meeting with Ava Santiago on Friday to start planning that. We just want them to get off on the best foot possible and